Hello there, welcome to the show. 2 channels here, now you know. Like and subscribe, it's all we need. Alternate, you're here to speak. And defense, let's take a peek. Collaborating for your eyes. Sharing content, no surprise. Together we shine brighter than one. Join our journey, it's just begun. Like and subscribe, hit that bell. Enjoy the show and wish us well.
I was ready.
Hello, welcome. Sorry, my apologies for being late. It's my fault.
I said
AJ
we were having some lawyer tech issues.
Yeah. I was having some minor panic issues, but it's all good.
Good morning, Udahef.
Good morning, Udahef. Right, welcome.
Gabby.
Hello, Gabby. Miss Gabby. I don't know where Bry Sandwich is. No idea, but I'm sure he'll be here at some point. So yes, it was not AJ's fault. It was mine. I could see her sitting backstage patiently, and I'm scoffing down my dinner. And yeah, I'll give myself indigestion, but it's all good because we's here.
We're here.
We is. All right. So we are, hopefully you watched yesterday's live stream on the Sean Finnegan Begin trial. Yeah. And we watched the testimony of his ex-girlfriend, Rebecca Dishman. Weren't they a treat?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hello. Did you want to come on stage or do you want to stay behind the scenes?
Yeah,
I had a boop. I had a boop. Yes. Yes, Finnegan. I think he's got more than whiskers.
Something on his whiskers too, I bet you.
Yes. Well, I've had a boop, so I'll add, and I'm not sure if she wants to come on or not. Hello, Miss Tanya.
Hello. I'll just sit backstage now if you want.
Okay. Okay, no worries.
Good morning.
Just message me in the private chat if you want to come online. Okay, cool. All right. Welcome everyone anyway. Sorry. So yes, getting back to the trial. If you didn't watch yesterday's live stream, Sean Finnegan is a 57-year-old man who is on trial for 14 counts of unaliving and abusive adult acts to Jennifer Paxton, a 32-year-old adult friend. I don't know. I'm trying to work out the words to use that YouTube will be happy with.
Let's just call her a victim.
Yeah, she was a trio. There we go. She's the victim. Yes,
she was the victim.
Yes. So this charming couple basically kept her chained to the bed for a month and then unalived her and kept her in the deep freezer in the locked cupboard in the bedroom for another, I think, was it 8 months? Thank you.
9 months.
Yeah.
Because I was when they said it, I was like, she could have had a baby in that time.
Yeah. Yep. Just
insane.
horrific.
Yes.
This poor woman. Her family had no idea what had happened to her, where she'd gone. Yeah. So we heard from the ex-girlfriend who explained in explicit detail all of the deviant stuff that was performed during her time with them, both alive and deceased. And so now we're up to the medical examiner. And she actually explains it quite well, because she gets this model out, and she has red and black like Velcro attachments, and so she goes through the medical report, and the red Velcro dots are sharp force trauma, and the black are blunt force trauma. So it actually gives you a good visual of the amount of injuries that this poor woman sustained. So we'll watch the medical examiner, and then I really wanted you to watch the defense attorney's closing arguments, because he has a style that it's almost passive aggressive, sarcastic, but he, like, when I watched Rebecca Dishman's testimony, I was like, oh, throw the book at him. That's it. There's no ifs or buts. But having watched the closing argument of this particular defense attorney, I did have some doubts creeping in, not so much to his guilt, but to the extent of his guilt.
Right.
So, so we'll listen to his closing arguments, and then we will go on to, because this is a couple of days old, this trial, although the final verdict came through last night. We will get to that. So we'll go through the medical examiner, closing arguments, the verdict, and then we'll move on to the second phase of the trial, which I'll explain when we get there. All right. So buckle in, buckle down, get your slippies on, your cup of coffee, and enjoy the ride. Hi, Christine. How are you going?
Good morning, Christine.
The case is getting very interesting now. We should cover that. Which politician? Are you talking about the Tellis trial? No, he's a journalist, isn't he? Robert Tellis.
I'm not sure. I've not watched any of that, because I won't. I'll just be honest with you, I won't do anything political that even has a political tinge to it, because I'm just not. It's too divisive, and I don't have any interest in it.
And I did have a look, AJ, just while I remember, on the one you suggested yesterday, and yes.
Yeah, I hope it should be covered.
Yeah, I just couldn't find out when it starts. I did have a look, but couldn't find it.
September 16th.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Righto. Shall we get into it?
Yes.
Let's do it. Add to stage. So this is the medical examiner, and I think she's Russian from memory, so... Oh, okay. If you've got the link for it, Uda Hef, can you send it to me in Discord, or to AJ, or to Gabby, or whoever, and we'll have a look. L. L.
And the what?
L.
If you'll, our next witness.
L. There she is. You will obey me.
You raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Have a seat, please. If you'll state both your first name and last name and spell them both for me.
Good afternoon. My first name is Darinka, spelled Darinka. My last name is Milusnik-Polchan. Milusnik is spelled Mileusnic.
I drink vodka.
And Polchan is Polchan.
And doctor, I think that the microphone that's in front of you can be pulled up a little bit towards you. You weren't projecting much.
That's why I was going to ask that if you'll speak up in that microphone, that'll help all of us hear.
Hey, babe.
Sure.
Questions?
Where are you employed?
I am employed by Knox County Regional Forensic Center. I'm the chief medical examiner for Knox and Anderson counties, and also the chief staff pathologist for the Regional Forensic Center.
Okay, and the Regional Forensic Center is
that's the Tellis trial.
Medical examiner's office?
That's correct.
Tell the members of the jury what is a medical examiner.
So in the state of Tennessee.
Is that the Tellis trial he's talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
See, medical examiner is physician who is appointed by the mayor and then approved by the county officials, for example, commissioners, to perform the duties of the medical examiner. Medical examiner oversees
medical examiners do.
Is the medical legal death investigation.
L. Get to the bit.
Because we have two sizable counties and regional forensic centers. We are required to be accredited by the National Association of Medical Examiners, which is pretty important. We do have the deaths that we attend our office, maybe.
Oh.
Too bad you can't do that in life.
I know.
So lots of photographs that were taken at the time actually are taken by our investigators of the individuals who come to our office die naturally. Then there are accidents, there are suicides.
Every medical examiner goes through the same spiel.
Tender Dr. Melusinek is an expert in forensic pathology.
Okay.
Dr. Vordire on this issue.
Your
opinion.
Okay, Dr. Melusinek, we're getting to the autopsy of Jennifer Paxton. Do you recall the specifics of her body's entry into the medical examiner's office and what specifically needed to be done before an autopsy could be conducted?
She had to be defrosted.
Yes, when she came, actually, we had to wait a couple of days to allow her body to actually thaw because it was frozen.
Oh.
Okay. And how do you go about that?
Oops.
So it's a slow process because it has to be, the individual has to be kept refrigerated in order to allow the process to take slow pace. Otherwise, the tissue would deteriorate really rapidly if we just left her at the room temperature or under any heater. So it took several days for that to happen. And the autopsy was then finally done on August 10th. 2020, which happened to be the day that Dr. Oliver was assigned to do the autopsies.
Okay. And to get to the chase in this,
please do.
With regard to her time of death, tell the members of the jury whether or not, based on her body's condition, would you ever be able to determine a time of death?
Unfortunately not. So in the autopsy report, that's not just only this case, but in many situations, the time of death is going to be the time where our medical legal death investigators arrives to the scene and then formally pronounces death. And in the state of Tennessee, that can be done by the physicians in the emergency rooms, the hospitals. And then when it comes to the scenes, that's going to be frequently the medical legal death investigator. So we go by that date and time.
Okay. Is there any way that you can tell if a body's frozen, if it's been days, months, years?
Unfortunately not, because her body was deeply, thoroughly frozen, so that was impossible to tell.
And doctor, the final anatomic diagnoses in the case, did you form an opinion about what those were?
Yes.
And what were the final anatomic diagnoses?
Although there were many different types of injuries on Jennifer's body, the main cause of that was actually strangulation, asphyxia due to strangulation, and the type was actually ligature strangulation. The manner of that was homicide.
Okay. And did you also notice multiple blunt trauma?
Yes. In addition to the strangulation, there are many instances of blunt and sharp force injuries.
Okay. And did you also note incised wounds, multiple incised post and perimortem wounds?
Yes. The number of wounds actually was too hard to count. There were multiple, and most of them appear to be what we call perimortem or postmortem. Perimortem means that there is looks like a vital reaction around them that happened as she was dying. And then postmortem says, well, there is no really vital reaction around these wounds, sharp force injury. Therefore, that happened after she was already deceased and there was no more circulation in the body.
Does that make sense to you with your first cause of death, the ligature strangulation, that the wounds would be perimortem and postmortem? How does that make sense to you as a medical examiner?
So as far as the strangulation, that was definitely what we say antemortem, meaning she's alive when strangulation occurs because the Ligature furrows on her skin are deep, show vital reaction. Of course, now they're discolored because of the freezing artifact. And also there is a hemorrhage in the tissue under the skin. So the tissue, the muscle under the skin, they're actually, as we do a layered dissection of the muscle and soft tissue, there's hemorrhage. Hemorrhage means she was alive. There was circulation, blood circulating through her body in order for that hemorrhage to happen. So we know for sure that is antemortem, and that's her cause of death. There were a couple of other injuries on the body that showed some what we call vital reaction bleeding. One of them was incision or sharp force injury on her left neck. There was actually blunt force injury, laceration on her forehead, one on the forehead and one actually on the back of the head. The rest of the sharp force injuries were harder to categorize, and that's why for most of them I would agree with the description that they would be perimortem, meaning she's dying and circulation is not as vigorous and leaving hemorrhage in the tissue, or clearly postmortem. There is no more circulation happening, and that it just so happened that this cut in the tissue is going through the layers of the skin, subcutaneous tissue, even to the muscle, but there's no bleeding whatsoever. So that's clearly postmortem.
And does the fact that there's a ligature, we got perimortem wounds, many of them that are potentially perimortem and postmortem, does that give you any time to estimate how long it took to inflict these injuries?
It was so anything that it's postmortem, it was hard to tell because it can happen at any given time during the period before the individual starts undergoing decomposition changes. And it doesn't seem to be that her body was in the process of decomposition prior to being frozen. So that's why it was hard to tell whether it was day 1 or day 2 after she was deceased. One thing that we can also rely upon is distribution of lividity. Lividity is the settling of the blood in the kind of lower descendant or lower parts of the body. If the individual is flat, it's going to be throughout the back. If the individual is sitting, it's going to be mainly in the kind of buttocks, gluteal region, feet, maybe, depending on what's all the way down against the ground or the surface where the body is resting. So it seems that based on the distribution of her lividity on her body was already in kind of like that sort of sitting fetal position when the lividity was settling. So that means that all the postmortem injuries happening during that first period of settling of the blood in the body and before decomposition sets in. So I would give several days. How many days? It really depends on what the temperature in the residence is. If it's too warm, it can be only a day or 2. If it's relatively cool in the 60s and 70s, it can take actually 3 or 4 days before decomposition sets in. So that really depends on the temperature in the surrounding environment.
So may I understand you correctly is that Jennifer deceased, when she's deceased, her body would have been X number of days before it was frozen based on the observations you made?
That's correct.
And that depends on the temperature inside the wherever she was?
That's correct. For example, if it's in the 80s, I would give her a day or 2. If it's in the 60s, it can be up to 4 days. So it all really depends on the environment.
Okay. But can you make an opinion about whether or not she was immediately frozen, or was there a buffer time where her body definitely, where she lay in state, so to speak, deceased?
So I would say that it had to be before her body became completely rigid. And for the individual to become completely rigid following that, with all the muscles becoming really hard to break and joints to fold, again, that would take a couple of days. So she had to be put in that position to fit in the freezer before rigidity completely set in.
Okay. And so a couple of days.
Couple of days,
right?
yes.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor? Doctor, what I'm handing you is 45, 46, and 47. And if you just identify what is exhibit number 45.
Exhibit 45 is an accurate copy of the autopsy report. signed electronically by Dr. Oliver, and it consists of 10 pages.
I don't think so, Udahef. I think it's probably natural curiosity, perhaps, and something that evolves in your career if you're in that that field. I mean, I did nursing for 12 years, and forensic pathology is something that I would love to do, or if I had my time again. So
I
each
gave
to
my
their own, I
answer.
suppose. Maybe they want to be a doctor, but then they decided to see pussy. Yeah, that was the reason I went from surgical nursing to intensive care nursing, because I figured they were intubated. They couldn't answer me back.
I can't complain.
Yep.
That's my
Yep.
answer.
And you know, the visiting hours were really, really strict and rigid. Nope, can't come in. Yeah. So each to their own.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And it seems like all pages are here.
Yeah, he could have.
Exhibit 46.
You know, that could have saved a few lives, maybe, or at least one.
At least done
Maybe if
something for good.
Yeah. And I don't know if you would. I suppose they'd have to enjoy their job as a medical examiner to keep going, I suppose. Yeah.
It'd be tough. It'd be
You're
tough.
welcome. Enlightening. It's one way of putting it, but yeah, cool. You can do anything if you put your mind to it.
That's the
Maybe.
toxicology report. That's based on the blood that we
Unless you
actually
know.
obtain
Okay.
following at the time of the autopsy. Again, the presence or ability to actually draw femoral blood from the body that was actually thawed after being frozen is telling us that the postmortem interval was probably a couple of days, not much longer than that, because that's why we're able to get that liquid fluid blood from her vein. So that came back positive for morphine.
Oh.
And then since there were some questions regarding the source of morphine, but it was actually morphine that she took, or possibly heroin, because heroin
Breaks down.
breaks down into morphine. I actually ordered a recent test that was conducted recently, I believe. I don't recall the date when I requested it. It was issued and signed July 30th, 20. So in July, actually, in order to answer that question, we did retain one of the specimens, which was bile, and bile would contain some of the breakdown products of heroin, possibly. So I ordered additional tests this past July on bile, and that came back positive for morphine. So it's confirmatory there was morphine in the system, but we didn't find any other breakdown products. So the chance that morphine came from heroin actually was less likely.
Okay, and can you give an estimate based on the amount when she would have ingested morphine prior to her death?
That's actually hard to tell because it's quite a bit of morphine. It's 85 nanograms per milliliter in the femoral blood, and it's 4,500 nanograms per milliliter in bile. So it really depends how much was taken. So it's hard to tell whether it was an hour or several hours prior to her dying. So whatever she had in the system when she died pretty much stayed stable, partly because she was frozen too. And then we also saved those specimens, preserved them in a proper manner. So whatever it's in the body at the time of death is pretty accurate, but I cannot really tell with certainty how much she took.
I wonder if they rated his mother's palliative care meds and dosed her up.
Well, at least she was.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
if you're going to be something like that happen to you, just go ahead and OD me.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Took and when she took it.
How would we as people react with that amount of morphine in our blood?
Well, with 85 nanograms per milliliter, I would be dead. But because I don't take any morphine. But morphine users or heroin users can develop tolerance, actually quite a bit of tolerance. So so that person would live and even possibly maybe act fine.
Function normally.
Because of the tolerance that she or he developed after long-term use of.
The amount of opiates that my doctors gave me at the end, like build up towards the end before I got off them all, 125 nanograms, 125 milligrams of morphine per day was
Wow.
my equivalent. And I functioned absolutely normally. Not a problem whatsoever.
Morphine or heroin. So
Okay.
it's hard to really predict how she would have reacted because I don't really, I know that she had drug use issues, but I'm not really sure how consistent her use of morphine was.
Okay. And to be clear, it was actual morphine that was given. She was in her system.
Yeah, this test actually consistent with her at taking morphine.
And does that, in consideration of the injury she sustained, does that alter in any way what you think about how it would affect her being a heroin user?
No, this is really independent of her cause and manner of death.
Okay. And regard to the autopsy report, we would move that in as number 45. The secondary report would be 46, would be the original toxicology.
Original toxicology, yes.
And 47 would be the supplemental toxicology. We'd move 45, 46, and 47 in.
Yes.
Pass that to the court reporter, please.
Subject to our
Yes, sir.
Good morning,
Okay,
Regina.
Doctor, with regard
Good
to,
morning,
we've already
Regina.
talked about this, 3 different types of
You can enter like that any day.
No kidding.
injuries that you noted. You said ligature, you said inside wounds, and you said blunt trauma, right?
Yes.
Okay, if I could have her, when she explains the injuries, show on the mannequin here, and we can put markers on the mannequin where the injuries are, and she can explain what they are.
Good
Doctor,
morning,
if you wouldn't mind
Adair.
stepping down and
Good morning, Adair. Hope you are well today.
It's not bad, but not quite as good as Regina's entrance. Have to step it up a bit.
And, for the record, we're going to be using just push pins with red markers on them to where when the doctor describes the first injury, she's going to go in order and then put a push pin where the location of the injury is and then describe it.
And then at the conclusion, will you take a picture of it so we can make that an exhibit? Is that what
We can do that. We'll probably use it in closing argument, or yes, we can take
Right, I'd say a
Yeah,
picture
they
so
leave
the
it in the
appellate court
courtroom.
can review it as well.
We can do
Hey,
that.
Okay, go ahead.
did I miss it? Did she say that generally they can't tell you the order that anything happened in? But he
No.
just said she's going to put the order, like the first injury in, or she's
can
just
tell
putting
if-
the injuries.
What they've got is the red markers are the sharp force injury and the black markers are the blunt force trauma. And you can tell what injuries happened first if there is bruising or bleeding or, in the underlying tissues because the heart was
Right.
working. If it happened before she died, but anything afterwards wouldn't have any of that. So you can tell that happened post-mortem rather
Right.
than.
So that's basically the way she's going to
I think so. I think she
do
goes
it.
from
'Cause
sharp to blunt in
Does she-
order-ish.
I just
I
think
think.
she can't be like, okay, they poked her here with a sharp pointy thing first and then
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
then they did that. She can't do that. So
No.
I just want to
No.
make sure that they weren't trying.
She does explain it fairly well from memory when I
Okay.
watched it, I think, yeah. But yeah, there's not much space left. It's not covered.
That's sad.
Poor bugger.
Go ahead, doctor, if you want to. Go ahead. I'll leave.
This is actually a really good
Go ahead with your
visual aid.
first noted injury.
So,
Are you-
with your permission, I'll just go by the report.
Actually, I think
Yes,
she
ma'am.
works from top to bottom.
So how we tend to actually classify the injuries for easy follow-up is divided by the type of injury. The first category was blunt force trauma. The sharp force injury. The second category was the strangulation, and then the third category was the blunt force trauma. So with a sharp force injury, actually, we went by in anatomic order. Pathologists in general go in anatomic order to describe the trauma. That does not mean that that's the order how all of these injuries happen. It's just that anatomically it's easy to follow. So the first was actually described as a sharp force injuries, broad area of oblique incised wound over the left maxilla. So there was a large area of the left maxilla. If this is the nose, that would be in this region. There was a very irregular cutout. So we called it like a sliced or incised injury that pretty much involved the maxilla, part of the temple, actually even part of the eyelids, and it was very irregular. That particular wound was up to 4 inches in size and actually did not show any vital reaction. So that would be in the category of perimortem/postmortem trauma, meaning that her circulation is not active anymore and possibly she's already deceased. There was actually similar injury that involved the left ear. And that part of the ear was actually absent. So there were a couple of areas that appeared like that.
When you do this every day, you do become desensitized a lot to this sort of stuff. So it must be hard for her to step back when she's testifying and not be so brutal-ish, do you know what I mean? Like so clinical, but then she has to be as well. So
that a cutout was so large and substantial that part of the skin and subcutaneous tissue was not present, was missing. However, with the decedent, we did have several pieces of small to medium sizes pieces of skin, subcutaneous tissue, and even a little bit of touch muscle that we could match to some of these sliced or incised injuries on the body. Then there is an interesting injury, and that is the nose. Now, this was actually different than many other incised injuries that I'll address on her body because it appeared to be post-mortem. There is no vital reaction, and it's a very nicely incised cut through the cartilage. So it's lower than the bone, and it's through the cartilage, and it's beautiful, regular cut that cut out the kind of like a 10 of the nose. The nasal bridge was completely gone. It's very regular. It was almost kind of looks like a by design. But on top,
what is he thinking? I remember doing that. That's right. I cut that bit off.
Yeah, and I liked it. I was doing things. Rebecca caught me.
Yes.
Top of that, there was actually a couple of incised cuts that were actually subsequent to the nose being removed. So I put two different cuts here. So there were oblique, diagonal, deep cuts that went all the way to the bone. And then there was the incised wound that was the only, there were a couple of incised wounds on the body that showed some viral reaction. And this is one that was in the area of the ligature to the left of the midline. It was a relatively deep wound. It went all the way to the trachea. It did not penetrate into the trachea, but it went through all the muscle, skin, subcutaneous tissue, muscle, all the way to the trachea. And that's the wound actually that was surrounded with hemorrhage. The question was, would this hemorrhage be elicited by the strangulation first, and then the wound happens? And I would say that actually she was actively bleeding from that wound because in some of the photographs you'll see there's actually dry blood on her face and on her hands. So she was bleeding from some of these wounds. And the only wound that would bleed like that, that has the vital reaction around it, that's this particular incised wound on the neck. And then right below that, lower down, there's another incised wound in the lower neck, kind of slightly diagonal.
So, Doc, you're saying with those wounds, her throat was slit?
So, yeah, the throat was actually slit, and the size of that wound was actually over almost 2 inches. So these are the wounds that are in the head area. In the back, actually, there are several areas, and I'll take 3 of these pins. There is a slicing, so slicing meaning that instead of the cut like this, we have like a tangential sliced off kind of piece of skin. So there is the wound that is on the left upper back. So there's a slice injury on the left upper back, not far from the midline, and then there's one lower down. So there are some sliced, meaning a piece of skin and subcutaneous tissue is missing. And then there is also slicing injury on the lower back, and that would be in the midline. And we'll see my photographs right here. And there is also the slicing injury over the right gluteal region. Now, in the gluteal region right here, we're going to see some outline of kind of freezer burns and abrasions, and they're partially overlapping and kind of hiding a little bit of this injury over the right upper area, but that's the back. And then we have left upper extremity. So in the left upper extremity, actually, we have a very...
I hope if I ever have to have an autopsy that they use a mannequin that is identifiable to my body shape and size, just like that, because that is exactly reflective of me. Exactly, to the T.
Me too.
Large area on the shoulder that is it is a cutout, and it didn't show any vital reaction. And then similar to that, actually right below that, there was a larger area, and that larger area was very irregular. I call those areas and cutouts and sliced injuries with kind of geographic pattern, meaning that there is no particular regular pattern to it. It's kind of irregular geographic pattern. This is consistent. These two injuries were consistent, and they looked completely post-mortem. Is with the freezer burn right in the middle of that wound, and that's actually one piece of skin that we did obtain with her body in the body pouch when she came to the office. Actually, there's kind of a slice cut out, and came with it. There's a freezer burn in the middle, and then it's consistent with as her body was taken out of the freezer. That's where she was stuck, leaning to the left, stuck to the sides of the freezer, so had to be cut out.
Oh God!
Her out. So that seemed to be post-mortem at the time of extrication from the freezer, and it was a large wound. There's 7 inches on the side of the arm, and the reason how we know that that piece of skin matched is because that was one of the tattoos that.
Thankfully, they don't show those.
They would be more effective, but I don't really want to see them.
I don't think they could have insulted her dignity any more than they already have.
No.
Even with freezer burn.
Yep.
Because there actually the outline of the tattoo matched the defect. And then there were 3 oblique parallel incised wounds. Now these are kind of interesting wounds because they're running diagonally across the forearm. They were parallel, so they all almost have a pattern to them. And they were less than ½ inch apart. They were pretty long, and they appear to be. They're described as a perimortem. There is some reaction to it. So it looks like there are 3 scratches. Whenever we see something that has a vital reaction, that it's an incised wound, and actually one of the upper wounds had a defect that was like a real cut into the skin subcutaneous tissue. That is consistent with the defense injuries, so when the individual can raise the hand to protect face, and then that's where we find defense injuries, sharp force injuries, blunt force injuries. That's where we frequently find them. So that's those 3 incised wounds. And then there's also a wound on the dorsal, or actually lateral. When we say on the extremity something is medial lateral, then we're talking about the ideal anatomic position of the body. So that would be medial, and this would be lateral. So in this particular case, there is a superficial incised wound on the lateral aspect of the wrist dorsally. And there are slicing injuries on the dorsal surface of the hand. So there were 3 cuts on the back of the hand that appear to be perimortem, meaning that there's kind of hint of vital reaction around it, and the sharp object cut into the skin subcutaneous tissue, the left hand. And then also there is what is described as a laceration stab wound on the medial aspect of the elbow. So that definitely looked like a deeper cut. and it's on the inside medial aspect, on the inside of the elbow, and involve the skin subcutaneous tissue. And that's actually the one that did have hemorrhage around it.
I'd probably
So
bump
that
it down
appeared to
one. That's
be
pretty
more like
fast.
uncomfortable, meaning there's some circulation happening with this wound, and in the photograph, you can see that. So that would be left upper extremity. The right upper extremity had a slicing injury over the anterior aspect of the upper arm.
I think she does like the sound of her own voice.
And that's the kind of angled cut that would be in this area. And then there's a 4-inch area of slicing injury, similar to what we saw on the left shoulder and left arm. And that was over the, what we call ventrolateral aspect of the upper arm, apicubital fossa, and that would be in ventrolateral in this area. These are the sharp force injuries on the extremities. Now, the chest is or called thorax in this situation is interesting because unlike the these injuries, where most of it was kind of like a cut and a slicing injury, there was a injury that looked like a slicing injury over the sternum and left clavicle area.
It's only a little thing, isn't she?
Cluster of those injuries that would be in this region. There is a teardrop-shaped area around the mid-chest, left of the midline. And these looked all post-mortem. So the chest looked mostly post-mortem. And then the left breast actually had, I think, the most interesting injury because unlike the rest of the injuries, had a pattern to it. What I mean by pattern, unlike, let's say, that left arm, there was like a geographic slice taken out, cut out, this particular area that involved the nipple and areola, it was actually almost like a stellate. And if one would look at the margins of the wound, it had almost like a pinwheel appearance. It was almost like multiple cuts were made around it, and then finally the slice taken out. So that was the left breast area. It was post-mortem. There's no circulation. There's no viral reaction, but there's a pattern to it. It looks like there was part of the skin with the areola nipple was cut out on purpose, not just haphazardly. And then there is also numerous superficial small wounds on the rest of the breast tissue kind of surrounding it. And that was more kind of haphazard pattern that appeared post-mortem. I'll just put it on the side here. And then there were on the right breast, there was actually a cluster of injuries that looked like a cuts. It looks like the pattern was started, like there were several kind of radiating cuts, like it's going to start in the pattern of pinwheel, but no, it was never finished. So that would be on the left breast. So that nipple and areola was still there. And then there were some irregular areas with superficial incised wounds on the right side. That would be actually kind of lower chest that had interrupted pattern, and they were kind of more geographic and didn't really show any particular. It looked post-mortem, didn't have any particular pattern to it. And then so one thing about the chest, all of these, they're around the breast, kind of clavicle, sternum, mid-chest, left breast. There are kind of multiple. So this doesn't mean it's just one. It means like a cluster of little wounds all kind of grouped together. Finally, on the abdomen, there were slicing injuries. They were relatively deep, and there were. It was hard to interpret. The only interpretation that I could really put to them that are post-mortem, none of them had a viral reaction, but they appeared haphazard, but they were deep, and that was kind of unusual. So there was a wound on the upper abdomen in the midline. That would be kind of abdomen kind of starts with what we call epigastric region here. And then there was the area of a sliced injury to the right of the midline on the upper abdomen. That would be in this region here. And then there was a really large area of slicing injury. It reminded me of the injuries on the right breast. They were deep, but they were relatively haphazard. So there was no particular pattern to it. There were a couple of areas on the right on the left abdomen like that. And
what are you talking about?
Was 8 inches.
Did you mean to send that in a text message? What are you talking about?
Good morning, anyway.
Yeah, good morning.
She did a Gabby.
Maddie still had a finger, I guess. Yucky.
To text.
Yes.
Mm.
No, the other one did
area
not pop up anywhere.
There was slightly over 8 inches, and they were pretty much clusters of a couple of different injuries, but some of the slices were really, really deep and undermined the skin and subcutaneous tissue going deep under. So that would be the abdomen. And finally, there was a left side of the abdomen that would be another cut with a flap. So there were a couple of injuries that, again, as I said, there was a cluster of really unusual injuries that undermined the pattern that created a skin flap. So it almost attempted to remove the slice, but it didn't finish it. And then
actually, Carmen, while I remember, your mum was saying yesterday that this would be quite a good trial for Shy to watch with all the SA deviancy and
kinky stuff. We'll
what have you. I said, good morning. Hopefully the day goes better. How am I not did? Still, oh.
Well, did he?
Oh.
Don't leave us
Did he?
hanging.
Yeah, don't leave it hanging.
Did it?
Did they save it?
It's-
Did they pick it up or?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's appropriate for what we're watching, at least.
There was actually superficial wound
Slim
right over the
theme.
belly button.
On topic.
And then finally, there was an aggregate over the iliac crest that could be pelvic region.
Yeah.
And that's the
Oh.
last cluster that
Hopefully they can
measured the
reattach
aggregate,
it.
like 6 inches in the greatest dimension. So that's sharp force injury,
Owie.
mostly centered or clustered in the upper body. Ligature marks, there were
Which
5
finger?
ligature marks that kind of overlap, and they were distinguishable. Altogether, their width was about 1 inch. The whole cluster would be on those 5 different ligature marks. Some of it were overlapping about 1 inch, but each ligature mark was approximately 1/4 of an inch. And they were relatively consistently applied across the front of the neck and
That
the side
one?
of the neck, and then the pattern kind of fades away and then it becomes rapidly back, meaning that the ligature was relatively narrow, could be hooked, could be shoelace, could be anything that's relatively narrow like that. It was tightly applied to abrade the skin. Without freezing, all of that skin became.
Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed?
Black brown. And then on the back, it ran
that reminds
mostly, very, very slightly upper, but mostly horizontal, which is pretty typical for strangulation.
You motivated me the other day with your strawberries, and I packed a bowl of them. They're in the fridge. I'll be back.
Hanging, but it's the upward pattern. And then interaction pattern in the back means that there was other device that was used to kind of tighten it, or maybe their hands were there to tighten it. And that's why the pattern was interrupted in the back to tighten the ligature around the neck. One thing I could not really tell after the freezing artifact set in is whether there's 5 different separate applications of strangulation, and finally, because not every person always dies immediately, or it was just the 5 times that was kind of the 5. That the cord was created in such a fashion there were 5 different
Judge, I'm
separate.
gonna object, but I think she's kind of speculating now about what could be.
Go ahead.
So that's the ligature mark, and there was hemorrhage underneath, meaning that she was alive, and that was listed as her cause of death because the circulation to the head and the brain was interrupted. And then finally, last category is blunt force injury.
Yes, we will.
So the only one that we won't mark is actually ligature pattern, and that's 1 inch wide across the front and side of the neck. And then finally, with blunt force injuries, there is the laceration. Now, laceration can look like a cut, like a sharp force injury, but the main difference between the laceration and cut is that when you separate the margin, actually there's a bridging of the tissue, meaning that the blunt object struck the
I didn't
surface
see it
and
in the
then
audience
split the
yesterday,
skin,
Gabby.
and that means that
yeah,
it looks like
you
a
did.
cut, but actually there's a splitting and then separating, and then
sitting-
some of the tissue, especially vessels,
She's sitting on the state side. She is. I don't know if you've ever watched Star Trek: The Next Generation. Gabby will know what I'm talking about. She looked like Data. Her skin is almost a little yellow tinge to it. She's the one with the bangs that you asked about, the bangs. And I said she didn't look real. Her color is very weird. It's off. Something is off. And she did look like a mannequin.
Maybe probably
Data.
microsurgery.
Yeah, owie. Also, Adair, get some coffee. Get in some better mood. I'm going to send you to your room.
Resist the splitting, and then that's what creates bridging. And then frequently that, unlike the stab wounds or sharp force injury, there's a relatively small amount of hemorrhage around them. The blunt force trauma is associated with the bigger bruise underneath. Or in this report, actually, we can use, or you can see terms bruise or contusion or ecchymosis. That pretty much applies to the blunt force trauma.
And we have black markers to note each injury blunt force wise.
So there was a horizontally oriented laceration on the left forehead, and in one of the images, that is antemortem. She's alive, and there is a large bruise associated with it. There was no scalp fracture, but there's a bruising under the scalp that goes all the way to the bone. There's also ecchymosis. That's a term used, but that's actually bruising on the chin. And on both sides of the chin, there were these ecchymosis. There were actually some abrasion with the types of the blunt force trauma is a bruise
We all have those days.
Ecchymosis, the doctor overused abrasion. That's scrape of the skin in addition to the bruise, and that's on the right side of the chin, kind of almost segmental. On the left side of the chin, they're almost symmetrical. And she was alive. So that means that this bruising can happen only if she's alive when the either her chin hits something or the object hits the under the chin. And then there were the injuries on the back of the head, occiput, and that would be on the back of the head. That was actually close to the midline. It says actually abrasion, most like it was a type, but it's actually laceration, and it's in one of the images. It's similar to this wound. It's a splitting of the skin, and that's on the back of the head. So that's a laceration thing. The back has ecchymosis over the mid-back on the left side, and the abrasion. So that means that it's the surface of the skin is scraped. That's also
I concur.
blunt force trauma.
Me too.
There's a mid-back on the left. So there's a bruising essentially on the middle of the back. And then there's also abrasion over the buttocks. It kind of encircles the area of the buttocks, but because of the superimposed freezer burns, there in some of the images, they're hard to actually discern, but they're on both sides. So there are abrasions. And then we have left upper extremity, forearm, and upper arm. So the term that you'll see in the report is interrupted, which means that there were several areas where we see the bruising become sparing in between. Interrupted pattern actually means that
I chose a non-noisy item.
There's a pattern. So there's an object. If an object strikes the surface, then it's going to kind of push the blood to the sides, and then the small vessels in the skin subcutaneous tissue can burst from that influx of blood to the sides. So that interrupted pattern actually means that the object that the skin, we can kind of measure that area of blanching, and it's even more pronounced on the right arm, and you see them on the photographs. So that's actually interrupted pattern that we see on the arm and the forearm on the left side. And the in the area of the antecubital fossa, actually that is the largest area of bruising on the left extremity, and that's done on the inside, close to this particular area where there was a big cut. There's also now whenever marbling is mentioned, I don't consider it trauma necessarily. That could be just a postmortem change, because one thing that starts happening after her body was that now unfrozen is that now the decomposition will start to set in, and marbling actually can be a reflection of that. So that I wouldn't even count in the blunt force trauma. And then we have right upper extremity, scattered ecchymosis on the
blunt
lateral
force
and anterior arm
trauma. Not the black plague, the blunt force
I like how
trauma.
she goes, oh, it was on the lateral incisor of the posterior aspect of the right cubital fossa. There was a big cut. Like, oh my God. On the inside of her left arm, though.
I think that I know Adair doesn't like this, but they are probably going to see the pictures as well, because they said she just said that you can see in the pictures. But I think overall, this gives them a very good visual to put all of that together, instead of here's her arm, here's her torso, here's, I mean, you'll have one of her probably on the slab or whatever, but this kind of gives you a more up when she's alive visual of what was happening to her.
Yeah, they definitely show all of those photos and what have you to the jury. They just don't show us,
right? But I think they are doing it'll all tie it together. But I think, like I said, it's a good visual for them to have. Like, she was upright, she was standing, she was living when these injuries happened to her.
Well, yeah, they're pulling out all the stops, because at the end of the day, it's a big decision they got to make.
Right.
So.
And actually, there is one on the shoulder that doesn't really have any particular shape, but there is one really interesting bruise on the right arm that has like
an interesting bruise,
like a capital letter E pattern, meaning that's exactly the injury that we can measure now. The blank
to your opinion,
the size and the width of the object that the skin. That's fine. She's alive. So blunt force trauma that we can register, record, and measure means that she is alive and that happened. So that's all antemortem. Unlike many of the cuts, blunt force trauma is antemortem. And then the interrupted curvilinear abrasion on the forearm, antecubital fossa, that's on the right upper extremity, that will be here. And also we have the abrasion on the shoulder area, right here. And then we also have the interrupted ecchymosis on the ventral aspect of the wrist. That's the basically ventral means that it's in the anatomic position of the front. And then make sure that I have not skipped anything. Is the distal forearm ventromedial aspect. And then there's a broad area of ecchymosis on the right hand. Make sure I have that correctly. Ventromedial distal forearm. And then the left hand actually had a kind of confluent bruising. Now, anything that is on the back of the hand, frequently in my reports, I would say that the forearms and hands are consistent with the defense injuries. That's kind of typical for blunt and sharp trauma. Right lower extremity, now there's a mention of hyperemia. Hyperemia in general doesn't really mean necessarily bruise. They can actually be kind of a combination of postmortem position and potential injury. But there is actually a geographic abrasion that is on the anteromedial aspect of the thigh, and that would be in this particular area. One issue with the blunt trauma and the legs is there was a lot of settling of the lividity right there in the region, kind of pelvis, gluteal region, and thighs. And that actually can confound some of the measurements and evaluation. And then left lower extremity ecchymosis were on the anteromedial aspect of the thigh.
Didn't see that.
The right side.
And chocolate
Issue with
frog.
the geographic. There's a mention frequently in my reports, I would say, the aspect. And then there's a broad area of ecchymosis on the right hand. Make sure I have that correctly. Ventromedial distal forearm. And then the left hand actually had a kind of confluent bruising. Now, anything that is on the back of the hand, frequently in my reports, I would say that the forearms and hands are consistent with the defense injuries. That's kind of typical for blunt and sharp trauma. Right lower extremity, now there's a mention of hyperemia. Hyperemia
It just sounded like she said chocolate frog, but I don't see it in CCs.
And for the potential injury.
Like
but there is
chocolate
actually a geographic abrasion that is on the anteromedial aspect of the thigh, and that would be in this particular area. One issue with the blunt trauma and the legs is there was a lot of settling of the lividity right there in the region, kind of pelvis, gluteal region, and thighs. And that actually can confound some of the measurements and evaluation. And then left lower extremity ecchymosis were on the anteromedial aspect of the thigh, similar to the right side. And then there was actually a lateral hip ecchymosis. Let's see. And,
We're getting closer there.
That would be the left lower extremity. So we have, and then there was actually a large area that shows in the photograph the bruising in the patella, and that would be the knee region.
Oh, she moved
on the right
farther
side.
away there.
So, region of the patella on the right lower extremity, the right thigh, the
Oh, I can't even
ecchymosis
use
on
that
the left
analogy.
thigh, and then ecchymosis on the lateral aspect of the hip and thigh, and that was around 7 inches. And then finally, internal injuries. I already mentioned that the internal injuries are a reflection of antemortem trauma, and mainly they were present in the area of the lacerations on the forehead and the back of the head. Neck was the strangulation and the incise wound that was associated, and I believe that's the main area of hemorrhage in the tissue, meaning seen internal when we open the body.
Thank you for your return. Judge, if we'll wait until after the witness is done before we take the photos, or do you want Agent Anna to do that right now?
Sure. Oh, you want to do the photos now?
Do you want me to, so we preserve it as her testimony right now? We can get him to take front and back.
Well, whatever's easier for you to do.
Go ahead and take the photos.
L. L. Blink. I think they have a little break here. From memory. Yep. You know, they just have a break. And they come back.
Submitted those as an exhibit. I didn't know if you wanted those to be an exhibit in the proceeding or just for identification for appellate purposes. Those that would be good.
Okay.
Whatever.
Make it the next exhibit. Anything else I can do for you?
No, sir.
Okay.
A burlap
Adjourn,
sack.
please.
It does look a little like a burlap sack.
Yeah,
She's
she is.
got more color today.
Mm,
So
She
she's
looks
still an odd
crystal.
color.
mm. Yes.
Just Plank. Her name's Plank. like on Ed, Ed,
No,
and
that's
Eddie.
not mahogany. That's not the witness that testified. Not the friend.
Oh,
Mahogany.
no.
No.
Thank you. Have a seat, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, let's take a full information. So, if that's what we got, that's part of what we've got to do. I got to do it, and you got to do it. Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Dr. Malusinik, you had indicated during the autopsy process, while you're making findings and anatomic findings, that is of injuries, blunt force and incise force, you are also, or a member of your team are taking photographs of those?
Yes.
Okay. And the photographs that you take are for the purpose of documenting, obviously, the injury that you've spoken to the jury about.
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
What I'm handing you are 41 photographs marked as collective.
Yeah, we don't need to go through all of. I just go through all the photos and
That's it. Okay. It is collective exhibit
itemize them
50
pretty
with
much.
41
We don't see
photographs, and
anything.
I'd ask you to just leaf through those photographs and tell me what those are.
It pretty much just
To this
explains
collective exhibit,
exactly what we've just been told. All right. I promise.
Explain what
Mm.
those are. It's a
Yeah.
deceased person.
Yeah. We'll
The
get
end.
you can have a listen to see what cross
It's a
examination.
real life Oompa Loompa.
Yeah.
Investigate the cause and
Aw.
manner of death. And did you come up to a conclusion with this case based
That's
on
a good
all of the injuries that you observed in the autopsy?
in conclusion.
For the purposes of determining a cause of death in this case?
yes,
And what was the cause of death of Jennifer Paxton?
strangulation
And what was the manner of death?
and homicide.
Oh, I can slow it down again now. So strangulation, homicide.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So can you tell us again what you relied upon to come up with your opinions? You have the autopsy report. Is that what you rely upon mostly?
So I relied on the law enforcement reports, on the report of
That's
medical legal
right.
death investigation.
Basically, because this woman didn't physically perform the autopsy herself, she is the chief medical examiner. One of her associate medical examiners performed the autopsy, and she is reporting on it as part of her duties as medical examiner. Basically, the defense pretty much just tries to dispute her credibility in that she didn't do the autopsy herself, which was just
That's
a
kind
load
of
of rubbish.
dumb. Yeah.
It is, yes. It was a waste of time, and it was a ridiculous argument. So
I mean, I
they've
guess
already
that's all you
established she's
have.
yeah. You can poke holes in certain things, but not a medical examiner who's been certified as a witness, an expert witness. So, all right, closing arguments. Day 4. 7.
Red kidnapping.
They spent like 2 days going through jury instructions.
Wow.
Day 4, 7/18.
Is he chewing gum in courtroom?
Probably.
Shame,
Doing
shame.
something. 7/14. All right, series coming in, and this is closings, I think, from defense. If I have time stamped correctly. And there's a possibility that it's always a slight possibility.
I feel you there.
LL.
And that it was going to be
I would, two to
a
have.
lot of fantastic stuff, and a lot of gory things, and a lot of gross things, and a lot of things that are probably outside of our normal life experiences. Mostly outside of my life experiences, and I'm making assumptions that most of this stuff was probably outside of yours too. So what I'd like to do is go through the evidence and take a look at what the state's case is and see if we can't separate out the disgusting nature of all of it from the facts that are supposed to lead you to a conclusion. And that's really what you're here to do. And so when I told you at the beginning that this was an intellectual exercise and not an emotional exercise, I meant it. You have to be able to separate out the ridiculousness of this case. I don't really know any other way to say it. I mean, this is a horrible case. Like
this is the defense closings, in case you were mistaken.
Reason why there's interest in this outside of Anderson County. You hear body in the freezer, and it's not all you need to hear, right? And people want to hold people accountable for that kind of thing. And so, but it's important that we determine what the elements are. And this is where we're talking about an intellectual exercise versus an emotional exercise. Is just because it's outrageous, just because it seems like anybody involved with this should be hung by their toes, and maybe that's what you feel like. But that's not the law, and that's not what we're here to do. We're asking you to do something much more difficult than that. We're asking you not to jump to conclusions. We're asking you to actually look at what came in through the witness stand and through the evidence, and what does it tell you? Because the state does have to prove each and every element of these crimes to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Each and every element. That means even if there's 4 elements and 3 of those elements are satisfied, but there's one that's not proven beyond a reasonable doubt, that's not guilty. Does everybody understand that? I'm not supposed to, can't answer me, but so what I want to do is just talk about.
AJ, it's 9:20.
yeah.
Are you?
Yep.
You okay, or you?
No, I got to go get ready to. Yep. I will be listening, and I will come back to chat as soon as I get to my dad's, and I'll have to talk to him for a minute, but.
At least.
I mean, can't be rude. But I will be back probably, I don't know, maybe an hour, but I'll be listening.
No worries.
So
Have yourself
I
a
will do my
lovely day
best.
with your dad.
I will do my best.
Drive safely.
I try. I will try not to road rage. I will leave Gabby at home.
Take a pair of Crocs.
I don't have any.
All right, darling.
All right.
See you on the flip side.
Okie dokie.
Bye.
Bye.
Who we have involved, okay? And start with Rebecca Dishman.
Oh, he's a lefty.
All right.
I wonder if he's ambidextrous.
What do we know about Rebecca Dishman from the witnesses?
Well,
what do we know about her before she met
Hello.
Sean? We know that she had trouble staying in homes. She would live with multiple different places, and she kept getting kicked out of wherever she lived, and people would wash their hands of her. She testified to that.
Do you get points for freezing a person
out being homeless or anything like
unlivening him?
My points, we'll find out in the next phase of day, which will be in about 15 or so minutes.
So can I just ask a quick question, because I haven't followed all of the trial? But you're saying there's 14 counts. Is that like only for this person, like murder, and then lots of other ones underneath it just in case?
Yeah, so I think there was 7 at least involving the unaliving, and then there was 7 involving the sexual allegations as well. So they ranked pretty much from the top tier right through to the bottom tier of.
So it was really only one charge of unalivening, but with all the other charges underneath just in case.
Yep.
Cool. Lesser included. That's the word I was thinking of. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Because I just wondered how you could unaliven a person more than once, you know. Yeah,
well, they have it in tiers of like intent and premeditation, and there's all different criteria. And each one has its own particular.
Right from I really wanted to do it, and right down to I didn't mean really to do it. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All right.
Like that. So she obviously has a skill at being able to find a place to live. She hadn't worked in some time, although she did have a job as a CNA. right? So we know one thing, she moved around a lot. And what's more important about that is that she's kicked out of every place she lives. And if you've ever had anybody that's living with you, or if you've ever had relatives, or you know anybody that does these kind of things, people don't kick sweet, simple girls out of their house. People kick people out of their house because they're a danger or a threat to something in their home, either from stealing from them, or they're
not necessarily
harmful, or some reason. People don't kick people out of their house and wash their hands of them because they're sweet, innocent girls.
Objection, sir.
And the state is trying to present her as this mentally handicapped young lady who's sweet and innocent and is somehow a victim, even though they allowed her to plead guilty to all of the first-degree murder and kidnapping and rape. So don't let them base their entire case, which they have, on Rebecca Dishman and the fact that they're trying to tell you that she's incapable of lying. The fact that the DA just stood up here and said that Rebecca Dishman is incapable of lying should give you pause. That's a bold statement to make about their witness, isn't it? I mean, I've heard about bolstering witnesses, but my witness can't lie. Wow. So your first-degree murderer, rapist, kidnapper doesn't have the ability to lie. She can set up fake Facebook accounts, and she can carry on conversations and relationships outside of her normal relationship, but she doesn't have the ability to lie. So be careful. That's what I'm saying. The state is overplaying their hand a little bit here. And if they have to overplay, you have to ask yourself why. They've got a body in the freezer. They've got someone who's clearly tortured. I mean, there's no denying that.
I watched this defense attorney, just FYI, with the thought of Tyrone Tucker in the back of my head. And this is the type of defense that I believe he needs to present. This is the type of case. Where do you go when you've got nothing? Like, this guy is literally pushing it uphill.
Definitely.
And even though Ty, I believe, is 100% innocent, he's still got, and they have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, because of all of the speculation and all of the previous testimony and the way they present their case. He needs to try and address it, in my opinion, like similar to this.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, pushing it uphill both ways. Yes, correct.
This young lady.
So just try and keep that thought in the back of your mind and see how that would apply in his case when it comes time to present his defense.
Here. But that's not what this trial has been about. We haven't really heard that much about Jennifer Paxton. We've mostly heard about how Rebecca Dishman is a victim.
That's true.
So let's talk more about what we know about her. Of course, she got Sean Finnegan. She moved around several different places, got kicked out of all of them. Needed a place to stay. Mostly it was with people she called fiancés, right? She's 42 years old. She has 4 or 5 fiancés.
Mm-hmm.
She uses the word fiancé because she moves in with every single one of them because they give her a place to live and they feed her. So she moves around a lot. What else do we know about her? She doesn't work. She stays at home. She thinks she called herself a stay-at-home girlfriend, right? So she's a stay-at-home girlfriend. All right. She's lazy. She doesn't want to do anything. She stays at home and she lets other people take care of her. That's her MO. That's what she does. And what
It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Makes people want to take care of people.
He seemed to really be taking well care of her, though, too.
You need help and somebody take care of you.
Though I don't think she's totally innocent.
She seemed like someone who needed to be taken care of. That's how she presents herself. Because there's a lot of other things going on in the background, isn't there? There's all these other things happening. She's clearly able to lie and do all these other things, but she presents herself to these people in a certain way to accomplish what she needs.
One word, Regina: lazy.
She's incredibly manipulative. And we know this because she's reaching out and trying to carry on a relationship, at least through Facebook or something, on someone else's phone with an ex-boyfriend, Ramsey's.
Correct.
We heard that because that's in the text. You'd be able to read it where she sends a text to Sean while he's at work and says, "I had a dream about Ramsey's last night." Doesn't that seem like you're just sort of poking at somebody? "I had a dream about my ex-fiance last night." That's how she starts the conversation. That's one of the conversations, and he gets angry in their text. Most of the texts you'll read are sexual texts, and she starts the conversations. And then he's at work, and he says, "I got to go, I'm busy." That's really important, who's starting the conversations, okay? When someone's calling themselves your little girl and baby's little girl, and they want to set it up like it's a servant-master relationship, but dominance and submissive sexually does not equate to life. There are masters of industry and CEOs of giant corporations that pay thousands of dollars to dominatrix to be submissive. So don't conflate the two.
I wonder if we'll hear from any of those personas on Sunday or Saturday evening with our interview with Miss Heather. Stay
That
tuned.
should be an interesting interview.
I'm sure out of the 14, there'd have to be a dom sub at least.
At least one.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual desires and life can be different. And so don't conflate the two. What else do we know about her? So she's into kinky sex.
You find one cheaper,
Right.
Uda Hef.
Before Sean. She told us that on direct. On direct, maybe cross. I don't remember, but she told us that on the stand. We also know that because she showed up to Sean's house with her own sex toys and butt plugs. I don't know if you know what butt plugs are. I'm not a sex expert. I'm not Dr. Ruth or Dr. Joyce.
I'm
Brothers,
sure you can
and that
work it
probably shows
out.
my age that I'm using those as references. But
Find a
I'm pretty sure
dom
butt
or
plugs are
sub
something you stick in your
dentist.
butt. I'm just going to
No, his testimony. I'll go backwards and have a listen to what he says about butt plugs.
go out there. For Dr. Heather, she told us that on direct. On direct, maybe cross. I don't remember, but she told us that on the stand. We also know that because she showed up to Sean's house with her own sex toys and butt plugs. I don't know if you know what butt plugs are. I'm not a sex expert. I'm not Dr. Ruth or Dr. Joyce Brothers, and that probably shows my age that I'm using those as references. But,
What color were they?
Were they presented as an exhibit? Oh, stop, Jack.
butt plugs are something you stick in your butt. I'm just going to go out there. But she brought that
stick in your butt. I'm just going to go out there.
His house. There's literally nothing about Sean having kinky relationships or anything outside of maybe a prostitute or somebody coming to his house.
Yep.
Until she shows up.
I think he liked the detail of there.
There's nothing in evidence until she shows up. She shows up with those toys. If you
He
look
goes
at
home to his wife and says, "Guess what? I said butt plugs in court today 5 times."
that picture of her that looks like she's
I love my
rolling
job,
around
he
in
says.
feces
I'm
or
not
something
paid
that
for
the
it.
DA keeps liking to show you. She took that picture. She took that picture and sent it to Sean. That's why it's on this phone. You can see it from the angle of the shot. So we keep talking about her being sweet and innocent and she can't lie. And what really comes down is who's in control. That's what this whole trial seems to be about, is who's kind of controlling this relationship. And the reason why it matters is because intent is an element. So to convict somebody of first-degree murder, to convict somebody of kidnapping or aggravated kidnapping or any of those sort of crimes, you have to find that they intended that it happened that way. And so that's what we're going to dig a little bit into as well. So what else do we know about Miss Dishman? Before she met before she met Sean, she's into Satanism. The state wants to gloss over that, but she comes in and says she's into Satanism and a Wiccan and all these other things. Her dad was a preacher. I understand that you teenagers
At least he's not doing a half-assed job.
dabbling and all that kind of stuff, but we're dealing with a horrific murder here, with a body that is cut up and sliced,
Hey,
and there
Not
is a
expect
crucifix
that
that's
from you.
cut off of her arm. They can say it's sliced or whatever. That's not. There may have been freezer burn on there, but they can't really. She didn't testify that body was taken out of that freezer at that point, so she didn't know any of that stuff really. The body could.
He's certainly given him a load of information.
We don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh.
But we know that the biggest part that was sliced off of her arm is where the tattoo of the crucifix was. There's no other cut like that anywhere on her body. We know she was a cutter.
Oh.
There's tons of little cuts all over this body. So what they want to do is make this Sean's fantasy, right? This hookers are the easiest ones to kill. So this is Sean's fantasy. And I told you at the beginning that it's too easy. You know, who are they going to blame, right? Who are they going to blame? And so that's how you can see that he might be fearful.
Why are hookers easier to kill than normal women?
Maybe he made terrible decisions. But the point is they're trying to switch roles.
Maybe because they're not home as often. I don't know. I was just getting into my car. I blame the guy at the hardware store when I went in, asked for a butt plug, and he sent me to the. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, no.
Maybe wrong store.
Gabby, what would happen if you had combined a butt plug with a can of baked beans? Would you explode?
Well, I'm trying to switch roles, and that's what we seem to be arguing about here is who was actually in control of this relationship. We've got Dishman. She moved around. She can't stay in a place, and she's constantly looking for the next place to go and who's going to take care of her. Okay, she's a Satanist. She has a history of
presumptive
kinky sex. She shows up with all her own kinky sex tools. They meet on Facebook. Have no idea what she said to him on Facebook. We know she was a CNA. We know he takes care of his 80-year-old mother who's in hospice care. Maybe she said, I
He failed his CNA.
Take care of your mother. I don't know. We don't have any of that stuff, do we? I have no idea what that conversation is. Okay, what else do we know about her? Before Sean. I think that's about it. I think that's about all we know about her. So what do we know about Sean before her? I'll put Finnegan up here. Sean lived in the same place for a couple of years. Same place, all right? Same place, same home. Sean worked a full-time job, more than a full-time job. And during the busy times of the year, every day he worked. That's the testimony. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he worked full-time. He worked at full time. He took care of his 80-something-year-old mother who's in hospice care and ailing and dying. He's picking up her medicine. He's going to work from 5 in the afternoon till 5 o'clock in the morning, just about every day. That's 12 hours a day. Not
regular saint
from Oak Ridge to Merchants. So 12 to 13 hours a day most days. He's not at that place. He's not at that apartment. But he's got a mother to take care of. So it seems reasonable that he might want a little help. If a girl is there and could stay there, that would be helpful. That would be a reason for her to be there. She's a CNA. But you heard from her that she had an up and down relationship with Miss Francis, and I'm not sure that she really did much of anything around that.
That gives you the shivers, Gabby.
What it kind of sounds like.
Yeah.
But she had the freedom
I'm
to
with you.
or stay, or help Miss Francis, or really, she had all the time in the world to do whatever she wanted to. Of the two people that are involved in this, only one of them had all the time in the world to do whatever they wanted to. And it wasn't Sean Finnegan. Sean Finnegan wasn't there. Sean Finnegan's a simple kind of dude. This is what we know. He has the same home. He takes care of his mother. He has the same job. He shows up. He's on time. He's reliable. He does a good job. He stays after work and hangs out. Seems like a normal guy. That's what the person that works with him said, right? Didn't say anything negative about him necessarily. Something about having two girlfriends and laughing around and joking around, and he mentions a Jen. Well, Jen is not an uncommon name, first of all, so who knows? who he was talking about, or if that was what he meant when he said it. I mean, they're trying to make you believe some off-the-cuff remark has something to do with this when it may have absolutely nothing to do with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
He was, let's say, he took care of his mom. That's an important thing.
Only an hour.
Took care of mom. He was a regular at Rent-A-Center. He was a good customer. He paid his bills on time.
Yeah.
He was reliable.
Yeah.
He showed up every Friday to pay his.
Of course, he was a good customer at the Rent-A-Center. Like, you want them to come and repo the freezer? Really? Hello?
He was having enough trouble keeping it separate from the chops, mate.
Yeah.
Bills. That's from Rent-A-Center. He rented other stuff.
Oh,
It wasn't uncommon for him to rent things.
correct.
Okay. So that's the stuff we know about Sean. So these are the two people that we have before they meet. We have Rebecca Dishman. She moved around. Couldn't
Correct,
stay in
she
place.
did.
She's obviously burning every bridge. She's burning every bridge.
Probably in advance, you'd heard.
Mm-hmm.
She meets Sean on Facebook, moves in with him in a short amount of time, not to work, but to be taken care of, to be a stay-at-home girlfriend. And I have to assume help with his mother. I have to assume. I don't know. But I think that's kind of what she inferred, even though she said she didn't have an up and down relationship with her. But I would think for Sean, it would be comforting to know that there's someone there with your 80-year-old
No, the
mother.
freezer was kept in the bedroom cupboard, and the cupboard was locked. But I will say, when detectives came 9 months later, after Rebecca eventually fessed up and told them what had happened, and they went to search his home, he had removed her from the freezer and carefully
Stowed her in between the bed slats or something.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
put her under the bed slats somehow, between the bed slats, under the slats of the mattress, and concealed her fairly well, apparently. And then it was
Lot
only
of
that the
Glen 20s.
detective noticed, I think, like a lump where her foot was, because the room was apparently spotless and neat and tidy, that this seemed out of place. And he investigated further and found her. But the defendant had put an empty pizza box in the freezer in the cupboard. Yep.
Mother who's sleeping at the top of a wooden staircase. It's just a thought.
It was originally in the lounge room, but apparently that looked weird, so they moved it up to the bedroom where no one else could find it. Learn how to drive you. Gabby's driving again. Learn how to drive you, gobnobber Jesus, motherless Teresa. No, it was because he must have been given the heads up somehow that they were coming, and she was frozen still. And as the ME said, it took 2 days at least, I think, before they could do the postmortem, because she was so deeply frozen. She'd been in there 9 months.
Was she in one piece?
Yes, and she still had some garbage bags and shower, the plastic shower screens wrapped around the lower half of her body, still under the bed. Didn't match the decor in the series. In the locked upstairs bedroom closet.
And you have
Don't
to
you keep your pizza there?
To support
Mm-hmm.
everyone,
I don't eat pizza.
which is what he was doing.
Neither do I.
So he housed her, he fed her, including several other people who probably stayed and maybe helped with his mother. But that's what we know about them. That's what we know about them from their witness, from the state's witnesses. That's what we know about these two people. And we're talking about character here, right? What do we know about from the neighbors? Okay, because they make a big deal. The neighbors choose Rebecca, right? Well, Sean lived there before Rebecca. The neighbors knew him before Rebecca was there. And what did they say? We never had a problem with Sean. They were friends. Nothing weird. Never had a problem. Good neighbor. Pre-Rebecca. Pre-Sean. All right. So they met on Facebook, right?
Who uses a chalkboard anymore?
It didn't take long before she moved in. And we talked earlier about how
that's what I
our
just
natural
said, Gabby.
tendency, I think, in power, looking at a power and control in a relationship, my natural tendency is to think, especially in most scenarios, that a man is in charge, especially if there's some kind of
I bet you do.
combative relationship or
Defense
whatever.
attorney.
We usually think of the man as being bigger and stronger and in charge. Folks, look at the pictures. The side. If you're just talking about the strength, because he brought up strength, that's the only reason I'm bringing this up. At the time, Sean probably weighed 150 pounds. I don't know. You could that might be in the record, so whatever. So did Rebecca, or maybe more. She was bigger than she was when she sat in here, and she had purple hair. She looked different than she came in here. So that's another thing you should ask yourself about too. Is why would they
I used to have
like a teenager?
I used to have purple hair, and I didn't have a dead body.
Tendencies? No, neither did I.
Closet.
I had no problem discerning my chops.
You've got a purple tie on, sir. What have you got in your closet?
Maybe butt plugs.
I take offence at that.
That are up in here with her hair and her glasses and stuff to make her look like she's simple. That's not what she looked like when she was arrested.
Oh, show us the picture.
So then let's jump forward to August 8th, 2020, because that's really where the story begins, right? And we've got this timeline down here. That's what I'm going to use. All right? Here's
purple, pink,
November, December. This is 2019. All right. And then we got all the way over here. We got August 8th. I'll go 8/8. I mean 5th. Sorry, August 5th. And that's when the story begins. That's when Rebecca Dishman decides she's going to escape, right? But she's not escaping Sean. She's escaping the situation that she created, because she's been in control the entire time. The entire time. Sean, what was he supposed to do, honestly? Right? If you believe,
preheat the butt plug.
What his statement was, where he comes home,
courteous,
or she hits her, or he
maybe
comes home
you should have hired some kind of
sawing
sawing implement to reduce the size of the pieces to get rid of them.
Hired an ultrasonic butt plug cleaner. I don't know. He could have done a lot of things.
His house.
Yeah.
What's he supposed to do? I don't really have a good answer for that, because my thought is that if he called the police, he would be sitting right there. He'd still be sitting right there. He'd still be sitting there.
Well, it's true.
So
I mean, they both did
prisoner?
it. Whoever first gets the phone call, mate, and says, "Yep, I'm going to spill my guts."
At the house for 12 hours a day with unlocked doors, not chained to anything.
Yeah, but she's already been convicted. She's got life and 50. So
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean,
I'll just clench myself.
it's just one of those natural reactions, isn't it, Gabby?
Yep. That people say that to me a lot. Funnily enough, there, Gabby.
We do know the correct name, don't we? The sphincter.
Yeah. Yep.
Are we allowed to say
No
that word?
telephone, no GPS monitoring on her, none of this stuff. I mean, who could come and go as she pleases. If she just walked out the door and left, he'd never be able to find her. That's all she had to do. She didn't do any of that. She stayed for 8 months until just a couple of weeks before she left, and she started to set up her escape, didn't she? She goes over to the neighbor, who everything's fine with up to this point. Everything is fine with the neighbors up to this point, and she starts hinting to them, right? She starts hinting to them a couple of weeks before this. Sean's abusive, and she's simple. that's the way she presents herself to them. She's sweet and simple. She's sweet and simple, and she comes over and she borrows her phone and sexts her boyfriend, and then deletes the text so that the neighbor can't see what she's texting on. Simple.
It's her fiance.
She goes next door to the neighbor she's never spoken to, not friends with, any of that kind of stuff,
I
right?
actually don't think they were engaged.
He's going to kill me, whatever. Can I borrow your phone so I can set up a fake Facebook account to contact my ex-fiance? Simple, right? They're saying that she can't process, so that's the stuff she comes up with. That's called manipulation. That's not called being simple. That's not
Attention seeking.
Computation. That is complex computation. She is creating this scenario where she is the victim. She's the victim. She's always.
Did you count the judge, Gabby?
And the state body. And so their entire investigation is dependent upon what she told them happened. And that's what we're going to follow now, right? So August 5th, the neighbor decides to get her out of there. Right? Today's the day. And I think maybe she let something slip to Mahogany that she didn't mean to. And that started the steamrolling. That's kind of what I think happened. And now she's stuck. And so she's got to go. Or maybe she's been setting up this whole time because she was ready to go. Maybe she had another boyfriend who's had open room. I mean, it could have been as simple as that. She had another place to go.
Did Mahogany testify?
That's how she ended up with Sean. On testimony, she said, well, he convinced me to move in. And then on the very next line, she said, and I thought I was going to get kicked out of this last place.
Is very right on the verge of untrue, basically. The way Mahogany testified it was Rebecca didn't present like she was simple or anything like that. They just had a friendship, and Mahogany started noticing bruises and all sorts of stuff on her, and it gradually got worse and escalated, and until she basically confronted her with it and said, "This is ridiculous. You can't live like this," and it went from there. So he's not being 100% honest in this portrayal.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
I thought I was going to get kicked out of the place I was in before. So she needed a place to go, and she found Sean, and she moved in, and his life changed. His life changed, not hers. Okay, so we got her going to the police, and she starts to tell them the story. And the story is that she's the abuse victim. That's how it starts. She's on her way to a shelter because she's the abuse victim. I haven't seen any pictures of black eyes or bruises or strangle marks on her or any of that kind of stuff. So,
well, she didn't have a phone. How is she going to take them?
She's the least bruised up abuse victim I've ever seen in my life who was being threatened to kill. This is another manipulative move. She's controlling the situation. She's controlling the narrative. She knows that when she gets out of the house and she gets to the police, they treat her like a victim because that's what they're supposed to do. She's a female, she's young, she's coming in, she says she has an older boyfriend who abuses her. And we're taught to believe that because we're supposed to. But she was lying. But these officers don't know that. They're doing their job. And so they take her side. And even though she gives multiple stories, even in that first interview, and we talked about it on Cross, but even in that first interview, she talks about the body, about the whole thing is different. It happens at a different time of year. She's there for weeks, chained up to the bed. All this torturing is happening, all this stuff. She's making up all this stuff that changes over time as they go through the interview, but they still believe her because she has the inability to lie. Remember, she can't lie.
She can't lie straight in bed.
And so she's still in control. She's guiding the investigation, and she knows something about.
She's not smart enough to do that.
Body at Sean's
I'll get out of here.
place because
Even her
he
wife
helped
might
cover
do it.
up the murder she committed. She knows all the details. She knows all the details of the body. She knows all the details of everything on that woman, on Miss Paxton's body, her tattoos, number of kids, all these kind of things. You know why? Because she was there with her 12 to 13 hours a day by herself. The whole time, anytime, whenever she was there, she was the one who was with her. The ME told you that all those injuries. I mean, I think the DA asked her, how long would it take to accomplish this? Someone would have to spend a lot of time with them, right? Well, who spent a lot of time with her? Not Sean, he was working. He was working or picking up his mom's medicine. Or, you know, it's something we haven't talked about is I'm guessing that he probably slept on occasion.
He was selling Girl Scout cookies, all right?
So if he's working 12 or 13 hours a day, and it's only 5 or 6 hours a day, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for him to be controlling Rebecca and setting up all this stuff for this murder that he had absolutely no reason to commit. No reason to commit. He's living his life.
Really?
The only
No
thing
reason.
that changed about his life.
Let's see. I just held someone captive chained to my bed for a month, but I've got no reason to get rid of the evidence.
None whatsoever. She's seen every part of my body the whole time.
She can identify me.
Knows where I live now.
No motive at all.
He's already got girls that come over and have sex with him.
But he has to pay them.
He's already got girls that come over and have sex with him and help him take care of his mother. Even after Rebecca's there, girls come home with them and they have threesomes, and they happen and everybody moves on with their life. That's his life. That's
Is the mother still alive?
We may not agree with the lifestyle.
Did she testify?
That's the lifestyle he was living.
Oh, sorry. Not now, I don't think. She didn't testify, no. She was alive at the time, though. She was living with them.
I gathered that. Yeah.
That didn't change until she entered the picture. Something that caught me from the DA during opening, I think it was, but they said something like, this is a paraphrase, but Rebecca Dishman was with Sean Finnegan for only a few weeks, and suddenly then there was a dead girl in the apartment. So I'd like to say that now, because I think it sounds different when I say it versus when they say it. Sean Finnegan only knew Rebecca Dishman for 3 to 4 weeks, and suddenly there was a dead body in his apartment. The apartment he'd been living in with his mother for 2 years.
Well, that's not true either.
She
lived with him for a couple of years, didn't she?
No, she moved in with him after 2 weeks. But
2 weeks.
Jennifer was held captive for a month before he unalived her. So that's not true at all.
She's what changed. So who's in control? The person that goes to work every day? How is he controlling her? That's what I don't understand. How is he controlling her? Well, he doesn't allow her to have a phone. You mean he doesn't pay for her phone? Because the last boyfriend let her other phone that was there, they couldn't start up, let the service go out because he got tired of paying for her phone. So he doesn't allow her to have a phone. They really are stretching to make this servant-master relationship. She sits at home all day doing nothing. He goes out and works and provides for him, his mother, her, maybe even a couple of other girls that stop by every once in a while, right?
The freezer rental.
It's easy to point the picture. It's easy to point the finger at the 50-year-old white dude over there. It looks kind of creepy, right? It's just really easy to point the finger at it, and she knew that. She knew it when she started, and she's the one who has the reason to do it, and has a history of jealousy and overreaction.
Oh, hello.
And we heard about that.
Hello.
We heard about that too, because what happened?
I should change my background.
She started a relationship with a corrections officer. And then she sat up here and said she didn't receive any benefits from it. I thought that was the most interesting thing I heard most of the trial. She received no benefits for her relationship with the corrections officer. Other than the time spent with the corrections officer and access to the phone, I suppose, which is also a felony, by the way.
Just
And
throw that
then
in.
when to show that she's overreactive in a weird psychotic sort of way, when she finds out that maybe this correctional officer is having some kind of flirtation or relationship with other inmates, she threatens to kill them. She admitted that, didn't she? She threatened to kill people because they were having a relationship or whatever.
That just shows you the extent of her insecurities right there.
Relationship with a corrections officer that she perceived that she was having a relationship with.
Well, no female prisoners have ever had relationships with male officers,
and the
have
state's
they?
position is, well,
All
she didn't do
female
anything
officers.
about it. She's in jail. But that's what she does. That's, I mean, anyway, okay, so we're back to the 5th. She's setting this up. She's setting up her escape. She's telling the neighbor about some stuff that is just kind of silly and ridiculous. It doesn't even make any sense going over to this neighbor. And then the neighbor's testimony was kind of odd too. But it's about her right now. That's what this case is about. And she starts feeding this stuff to Mahogany. And I think we get to the point that I think Mahogany and her husband are good people. I think they're good people, and they wanted to. They're just going about their business, and I think Mahogany was duped by her, just like everybody else has been duped by her along the way. She's a sweet girl. We just thought she was innocent and sweet. Just didn't think that she thought like other people and stuff. And then you heard her whenever she found out what those texts were. When she actually got to read the text that Rebecca was sending on her phone before she deleted them, she was shocked by them. Because that's not who she thought Rebecca was. Because that's not who Rebecca showed her. And so when she goes to the police, they treat her like victims. What they're supposed to do is she plays that part. And then she starts feeding them details and strange details, right? So that we've got the fireball bucket. A lot of the stuff's in evidence, and it's going to be back there with it. And it's based on what she testifies to. It's all based on what she says. Every single thing comes from her. Every single thing. So let's go back. Let's go through our witnesses, okay? Let's go through our witnesses. We started out with 911. It's a call from Colt Pico. He's basically just regurgitating what his wife told him, right? I'm taking Rebecca. My wife called me. The neighbor says there's a body in the freezer. Anybody hears that, they're going to freak out, right? So of course he did the right thing and he called 911, and that started that process. That's what the 911. We hear from the family of the actual victim, in this case, Jennifer Paxton, who I feel like it's kind of gotten lost in this whole thing.
Yep.
Because all we were
first
able to
true
talk
thing you've
about
said.
is this girl.
Yeah,
the whole
exactly.
freaking time. But they don't offer anything to the guilt or innocence of this. That's just to show you who the victim is. And so I'll move on from that. Phyllis Tonkin came in. She talks about the missing person. And really all of that is just to show you that she was vulnerable. I mean, that's the point, is to show you that she was vulnerable. She's a prostitute. She's a drug addict. But she chose that life. And that's the part that we kind of get into, is that it was a dangerous life, but she had opportunities to get help and places to live. And she chose to not do that. She chose to be homeless and be a drug addict. And that's not to knock down. I'm not trying to attack a victim here at all. The point of that testimony was to show you that she would be an easy victim. But the truth is that testimony, what it shows is that's how they met. I mean, she's a prostitute and he likes sex. And he's a kitchen guy and late nights, and she's a prostitute that hangs out around that bar. And they met. And it's a business contract, basically, right? It's the oldest profession, I think is what they call it. So again, whether we agree with it or not, that's the facts. And that's how they met. And so she agrees to go home with him, with her bags and stuff, because he's offered her a place to stay. Because he does that. He has a history of doing that. You can stay here. Maybe she'll help with his mom. I don't know. I mean, I have to speculate on some of this stuff, right?
How can you speculate on that? He's your client. Didn't you ask him?
No, they never ask them whether they're guilty. Did you know that?
Okay. So Phyllis Tonkin comes in and she talks about the missing persons report. And that was filed in February. And so it kind of gives you an idea of how lost this girl was.
I think we get the idea.
From her family.
Mm.
She's roaming around and nobody really even knows when people are seeing her and stuff, but it takes several months before people realize she's missing. So that missing persons doesn't come in until February. Then we hear Rebecca Dishman's testimony, and she's kind of the meat of their whole case. She starts the investigation. And every single step of the investigation is an attempt to confirm what she told them. It's an attempt to confirm what she told them. There's very little attempts to disprove what she said. And every attempt is made to make the evidence fit the story she's telling. And it's kind of confusing. And so I'm still really kind of confused. I still have a lot of questions about when this happened. And we're going to get to that too, because we're going to figure out how they come up with their timeline, because they create a timeline. And when they create a timeline and when they indict, they have to name the range of dates in which the crimes were committed. And that's part of something you're supposed to consider.
All right. So does anyone have any opinions as to what the verdict may or may not be in this case?
Yes,
Yeah?
well.
No? Any ideas? No? Anyone up the back? Well, I think we should dally no longer and find out.
Yes, I think so.
All right. And move that one up there. Thank you. Full screen it. Closed captions. Get up there. Thank you. And share screen. Okie dokie. Ready, steady, go.
That verdict when the jury comes in, but I know we've got family members here and interested parties. You can't have a reaction to this. If you do, you need to leave.
I really like
And
this.
if you have one, I'll stop everything and ask you to leave. So please don't do that. Okay? So everybody, so you promise me that you'll do your best. No reaction, no matter what the verdict. Okay? All right. Okay. We'll bring them in, please. Everybody rise, please.
Bring the jury.
How many were on this one? 6 or something?
No, it's a death penalty, so they have to be 12.
Oh, 12, okay.
There's a lot. So be patient with me as we go through this. So Mr. Finnegan, if you and your counsel stand up, please, sir. Count 1, premeditated first-degree murder of Jennifer Paxton. We, the jury, find the defendant Sean Shannon Finnegan guilty of criminally negligent homicide. Verdict form for count 2, first-degree felony murder of Jennifer Paxton during the perpetration of attempt to perpetrate aggravated rape. We, the jury, find the defendant Sean Shannon Finnegan guilty of first-degree felony murder during the perpetration or attempt to perpetrate for aggravated rape. Next, count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant Sean Shannon Finnegan guilty of first-degree felony murder during the perpetration or attempt to perpetrate aggravated kidnapping. Count 4. We, the jury, find the defendant Sean Shannon Finnegan guilty of attempted aggravated rape. Count 5. We, the jury, find the defendant Sean Shannon Finnegan
His eyes kind of look like a meerkat.
Aggravated rape with bodily injury to Jennifer Paxton.
Not guilty of aggravated rape with bodily injury.
Count 5. Aggravated rape.
Maybe because of her profession.
Or bedding with one or more persons. We, the jury, find the defendant Sean Shannon Finnegan guilty of aggravated rape. Count 7. We, the jury, find the defendant Sean Shannon Finnegan guilty of aggravated kidnapping. Count 8. We, the jury, find the defendant, Sean Shannon Finnegan, County of guilty of especially aggravated kidnapping. Count 9, we, the jury, find the defendant, Sean Shannon Finnegan, not guilty of conspiracy to commit premeditated first-degree murder. Count 10, we, the jury, find the defendant, Sean Shannon Finnegan, guilty of conspiracy to commit aggravated rape. Count 11, we, the jury, find the defendant, Sean Shannon Finnegan, guilty of conspiracy to commit aggravated kidnapping. We, the jury, find the defendant, count 12, we, the jury, find the defendant, Sean Shannon Finnegan, guilty of abuse of the corpse.
Say that 100 times.
And finally, count 13, regarding tampering evidence. We, the jury, find the defendant, Sean Shannon Finnegan, guilty of tampering with evidence. Thank you. You can have a seat, please. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that means we've still got some more work to do. But first thing I have to do is...
So, that means he was found guilty on 11 of the 13 charges. As you heard, the ranging all the way down. So, with that, it moves on then to the second part of the trial, which is the penalty phase.
Considering different parts of the trial, now they call over there a grand jury what we call a committal hearing.
Oh, do they?
Yes. So before you're sent to trial here, you have a committal hearing where the prosecution presents their evidence and the judge decides whether it's going to go to trial or not.
I actually don't know.
Over there, their grand jury sounds a lot like our committal hearing in a criminal case.
Yeah, I don't know what the legal levels are in Australia.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure that's what is similar. A committal hearing is the same as a grand jury, and then we have the trial. We just have sentencing instead of a, what do they call it? A penalty phase.
Yeah, but we
just have sentencing. No, we gave that up a few years ago, about 1966. I think the last man was killed in Australia.
Yes,
I mean, unalivened via death penalty, yes.
This is a US case. It's based in Tennessee. And he has just been found guilty of 11 of 13 charges. So we're starting the penalty phase, which is almost like a mini trial again. So they do have a brief opening remarks from both sides. Then they have witness impact or victim impact statements. I think there's 4 from Jennifer Paxton's family and then 1 from Sean Finnegan's. So it's his eldest brother's ex-wife who gets up. And she actually has quite a lot to say, and it's interesting what she has to say about she met him in his teenage years, and she gives us a background on what the family history was like back then at that time. So it's interesting to listen to. And that takes about an hour, and then the jury goes and deliberates, and we come back with a verdict. So we'll start the second phase right now, and that will then conclude the trial. Hang on, let me just get the CCs up. Present share screen.
If AJ's back up now, I'll jump off if you want.
AJ's got her. She's got her
grandfather, father.
No, what do you call it? Her logo up. And she's logged into StreamYard, but she's at her dad's and she's in chat. So,
all right. So
she's not actually on live on air, if that makes sense. She's
at grandpa's house,
just like that.
Yeah. Yes. So her dad. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Share screen.
Oh, you have pre-trial conferences and then a trial. So what's the grand jury then, Carmen?
a grand jury generally is for whether or not they're going to indict the person, but to me, the level or the preponderance of guilt is really too low, because 99.9% of the grand jury they get indicted anyway, because the bar is so low. And this is what I was talking about yesterday. Perhaps that if that bar was raised, because you've got such a big gap between the grand jury's level of evidence they have to meet, and the prosecution is the only one that presents the evidence at a grand jury.
Well, that's the same as at a committal
So they're only
hearing.
hearing one side, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same as a committal hearing here. They only hear the prosecution side.
Yeah, so if they had a higher bar, higher standard to reach, then it may filter out a lot of the speculatory and not factual evidence-based cases, perhaps, that go on to trial. And yeah, maybe that's something we can discuss.
Investigate a bit more too.
Yeah, with Steve. He I don't know where Bry is. Mr. Bry, I missed you.
I really don't know how to handle it. I'm thinking about asking.
Right, into the law as well. All right. Now, we all hear that?
Yeah.
So, phase day 1, and we're going into. Sorry, dear sir. All right, and go.
Asking the 12 when they get in here how they're all feeling. If they're feeling okay, then I'm
probably
thinking about
take
just
that
letting the 2 alternates
down
go.
now.
But I know there's a risk. Or I can talk to the 2 alternates about their issue. One of them saying that the way we picked the alternates was rigged, which is kind of funny, but that's kind of what one of them saying. Then I go back in the back and picked them. The first 2 were going to be, even though you saw me pull them out up here, but that's just today's environment. So I don't really want him on the jury. If somebody gets off, well, I'll do what y'all think. Basically what I was thinking was lecturing for a minute about how inappropriate that is. And then secondly,
He looks like Mickey
if
Rooney.
any of y'all don't feel like you can do this, and here's the risk: if I lose somebody, we got to do it again. And all these people spend hours and hours working on this, but if y'all don't feel comfortable, because we may not get done today, and they may have to spend another night. And I think he told one of the police officers he wouldn't stay another night. He was going to go home. So
The defendant, Carmen.
State got any feelings about it at all?
I have a lot of feelings, Judge. But it's not something, of course, that we deal with regularly, and we want to do everything.
The percentage you need for probable cause in Indiana. So it's only 20%.
Okay,
I thought it was
to self.
preponderance of guilt is because probable cause is, I thought, was like for arrest purposes, but at the grand jury I thought it was the preponderance of guilt or preponderance of evidence. I'm confused now. But yeah, either way, it's a really, really low bar, and it perhaps could be reviewed. That's all.
So we note, if we ever go to the States, do not commit crime in Indiana or Massachusetts.
No, Indiana. No, that's where Carmen grew up. That's
Carmen
because Carmen is AJ's.
I know who that is. Yeah. 20% for probable cause, though, to search a vehicle or something like that. That's unbelievable.
That's why she was quoting from Indiana.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Don't go to Indiana.
It is, but that's where it starts. Yes. I think grand jury is 40 or something like. Yeah, well, they need to raise it. That's in my opinion, because just cause I said so.
Everything on the evidence. We can't just assume that everything will be okay on it. I think.
I mean, it's a very difficult
Boost this
job.
up again.
It's probably the hardest job of anybody here, and I recognize that. But still,
I'm definitely not unsympathetic to the situation they're in. That would be difficult.
All right, I've queued it up to the wrong spot.
Perhaps maybe the lecture is appropriate because
And
we think
Now they can say it relates to two different charges. That's fine. But we think it's only appropriate for the jury to consider
the beginning.
One
Sorry.
single aggravating
Un momento, per
So the
favor.
string of
Here we
felonies
go.
committed-
Here is the start.
And when you're going to be
They're only brief.
Sean Finnegan should be given the same amount of mercy that they gave Jennifer Paxton. In this case, the first entire portion of the case, we talked about the crime, and now we're talking about the consequence.
Well, just think, Carmen, you know, would if that grand jury percentage had been raised to say 60% even, because surely it's deemed as a filtering process in some way, shape or form. If that had been raised to say the 60% or even 50% mark, would Karen Reid have gone to trial? Would Tyrone Tucker be going to trial? You know, and how many resources are we wasting trying to convict innocent people when both are clearly factually innocent?
Just with your wrongful convictions there, Carmen, with the death penalty at stake, that's just unbelievable. But how long do people sit on death row on average? Do they, what is it, 10 years or something like that? Most of them, like, unbelievable.
Yeah. Yep. Well, they've got to give enough time, I think, for the appellate process at least, I think. Don't quote me because I'm not a lawyer. And
yeah, I understand that I have to allow a bit of time. But yeah, 20 plus, you're kidding me? Like, holy cow.
God, I suppose. And therein, again, the domino effect, you know, it perpetuates the problem and it pushes it, you know, the more people that you get through the system that doesn't make sense, Jody.
Yeah, just
trying to
give them all the needles so that you don't have to house as many.
Like
having to house more prisoners. Yeah,
it backs up the system because they're dealing with all this other stuff that perhaps they may not necessarily have to deal with. America, Team America. Yeah. Well, I'm glad someone agrees with me, Carmen. Thank you.
for first-degree felony murder and 2 different counts. And that gets us to the point where we talked about in voir dire, once you establish that he's committed first-degree murder and he's responsible for her death, then we get out those scales that we talked about. And the scales that weigh the mitigators versus the aggravators are important for a couple of different reasons. The first of which is to distinguish this crime from other crimes. And that's what the aggravators are for. That's why they've been enacted. They're to ensure you as a jury.
Yeah, I don't think ours is much better, Carmen.
These crimes, based on the statutory
but we don't have a death penalty.
This crime is distinguished from others. And let me run by you a different set of facts, like, for example, a drive-by shooting. And this isn't to mitigate or to denigrate drive-by shootings. They're terrible for communities and for people and the people involved. But if somebody gets into a squabble about something, be gambling, drugs, whatever, and then returns to the other person's house that they're squabbling with, sees him in the driveway and shoots him in the driveway, that's a first-degree murder, right? I mean, there is those things
That's
happen,
a classic right to bear arms.
But if you want to compare and contrast that to what's happened here, and we'll highlight that when we talk about the aggravators here in a second. There are aggravating factors to this homicide that make it special, that make this worthy of no mercy for Sean Finnegan and make it worthy of the death penalty.
'Tis true.
And when we talk about the scales that you put out,
how many,
going
Gabby?
to be looking at the aggravators, and the state only has to meet 1.
Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone know how many states in the US still have the DP? 27. Wow.
Well, obviously got TC.
Wow.
27. Wow. Tennessee's obviously one of them.
Correct. It is. Wow.
Wow.
That's
over half. That's over half.
It really surprises me.
Okay. Now, do you want to really impress us, Carmen? Can you name them all?
She probably can. She probably can. I would not put it past her.
Aggravator. The legislature has imposed and
Especially being in
given
corrections.
us what those aggravators are. And when you're going to be looking at those aggravators individually.
Speak up,
if
sir.
you find an aggravator beyond the reasonable doubt, you put it on the scale.
In about 5 minutes, there'll be a massive chat with it all listed alphabetically from Carmen.
And you give it the weight that you want to give it.
It's all right. I can Google.
And it can be a pebble of sand that you put on there for that aggravator.
There you go. There's your job.
In dump trucks
Tanya,
full of gravel.
you can present that after.
For that scale. And then you're going to listen to the aggravators, and we've elected on 4 different aggravators in this case, and that you're going to hear about. And at the conclusion of that, you're going to hear about the mitigators, and that's going to go on the other side of the scale. And I talked to you about this in the beginning, that if at the end, if you look at that scale and the things you've placed on it.
You actually just recently had someone unalived in custody, like within the last week, I think, didn't you? I'm sure I saw that one. No, not in New Hampshire. It's the US had someone executed last week. I'm sure they did. I'm sure I saw it somewhere.
I heard about one about a month ago that kind of went wrong.
Oh, it's 24, is it?
Okay.
The abolition of capital punishment does not affect Michael Addison, who was sentenced to death in 2008 for the murder. Okay.
Oh, here we go, Carmen.
See, I told you. I could hear those keyboards clicking. I could hear it going. I told you.
I knew Florida was one, and Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri. Yeah, they seem to be a lot of southern states.
And it's in alphabetical order. Look at that.
Yes.
California, Oregon, and Pennsylvania governors have issued moratorium. What's a moratorium?
You're not allowed to do it right now until we make a decision.
Okay, cool.
It's like the gun moratorium here when they said, okay, you're not allowed to have guns, but you can hand them into the police.
Gold star for Carmen. Good job. Thank you. All right.
For the aggravators and the things that you placed on the mitigators, if the aggravators outweigh the mitigators, you shall impose the death penalty. And we talked about that individually in Vardir, and you all said that you could understand your oath and that you all could do that. And so
only in 1984 it was abolished in Massachusetts.
Because we have talked about.
Nice one.
I'm going to star that comment for you, Carmen. Goes in the special section.
In the case in chief, which is the first part of this trial, we call it the case in chief. We like I said, we talked about the crime itself and responsibility for what his responsibility and roles were in the crime, in what happened to Jennifer. And in that, what gets lost in that is that the state is prosecuting the defendant, but the defense is also prosecuting Rebecca Dishman, which causes us, like I told you in Vardir, to plug your nose a little bit because you have to defend a criminal, and we had to do that in this case. But what got lost in all that was Jennifer Paxton, because we're busy defending Rebecca Dishman and forgetting about and talking about and focusing on what happened to Jennifer.
I'm glad that this attorney mentioned that.
That's what this part is about. The consequences based on
exactly. I mean, that's what it's really about.
This wasn't a
the end of the day, yes.
Somebody who shot in their driveway, which are heinous in and of themselves. But this case has aggravators that deserve your special attention. And the first aggravator that the state is electing upon is the torture aggravator. And at the conclusion of the case, obviously, at a closing argument, we'll talk about more specifically, but you could probably see or probably think and enumerate in your mind why this murder deserves special attention due to that aggravating factor that she was tortured. You probably think of all the things that were done that were proven and talked about being kept for 4 days, etc. But in the end, when you look at that, that's not saying that the defendant did that. That's saying that the murder in and of itself was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel in that it involved torture or serious physical abuse. And it's our position that our case in chief, the evidence you already have before you, satisfies
Thanks,
that
Gabby.
beyond a reasonable doubt that she was tortured. And if you find that, you take that and you give it the weight that's appropriate, and you're going to set it on the scale. The second factor that the state is electing upon is avoiding arrest. And you think about the circumstances in your mind. Was the murder committed to prevent the lawful arrest or prosecution? And you think about the circumstances of how this homicide occurred and why the actual death occurred. And the state is putting that in through its case in chief, that in fact the reason and part of the reason, even just if it's a little portion of the reason that they killed her, was to avoid scrutiny of the police and potential prosecution. That is a factor that you can consider as an aggravator in this case. And you're going to assign it a weight, and you're going to put it on the scale. The third factor the state is relying upon is the defendant had a substantial role in the underlying felonies. And your verdict already says he's responsible, but now the nuance is, did he have a substantial role in those underlying felonies? Think about the aggravated kidnapping. Did he have a substantial role based on the information you have in your case in chief in the kidnapping? And you think about and enumerate in your mind, and we'll talk more about that in closing, about why we think that's proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And you take that and you assign it the weight and you put it on the scale. And finally, the fourth enhancer that we're going to, or aggravator that we assert that the defendant, we've proven in our case in chief, is that they mutilated her body. And you're going to take that, and whether, if you believe that beyond a reasonable doubt, that he cut her nipple off, her nose off, portions of her arm, getting her from the fridge, putting her in the freezer in the first place, then you'll take that as an aggravator, you'll assign it a weight, and you'll put it on the scale. And all of those aggravators will weigh up to something, and then you're going to find the mitigators, and they're going to present the mitigators, and you're going to put that on the scale. And then you're going to look at it. And it's the state's position at the conclusion of all that, that you're going to find that those aggravators far outweigh the mitigators, and you shall impose death. Part of the process is that we have just like we did in the first trial, we call witnesses to establish those factors. We're not going to call any witnesses. You've already heard from them all. So our case in chief will have essentially in this part of the trial, we'll have what's called victim impact statements. And you're going to hear from Jennifer's family, and they're going to tell you how much they miss her. You can't use that as an aggravating factor, but a consideration. But at the conclusion of that, when we get to the end, when you weigh that scale against the mitigators, it's the state's position, and we will ask you to find that you give him the same amount of mercy that he gave her. Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel?
Thank you, Judge. Morning. No, you haven't heard much from me in this trial, but we spoke, I think, back in June when we all got to meet one-on-one. Nobody remembers back that far. I've been driving in every day on this case down Clinton Highway. I'm based out of Knoxville. And right when you come over the county line and you're coming down and Lambert's is on your right, there's a big billboard on your left. It's got a picture of Dolly Parton on it. And it says, find the good in everybody. Find the good in everybody. And thought about it, and it just kind of hit me one day that that's what my job is in this portion of this trial. And that is to investigate and collect documents and talk to people and meet with my clients, and then try to prove and present the good that is in Sean Finnegan. And it's probably a difficult task, I realize. And it's difficult for you all to consider after all the things you've heard in this case in the last week or so. But that's part of my job duties, and honestly, it's an honor for me to represent him through this process. So that's my job. Your job is to decide one issue, and that's whether to sentence Sean Finnegan to death. That's it. It's the one thing you have to decide in this part of the trial. It's more complicated than that. There's a lot of legal standards, and it's a mini trial, and there's witnesses and all that. But if you can distill it down to its essence, that is why we're here. That's what you're here to decide. So I want to start with acknowledging a few things. I understand that some of you may have concerns about your verdict in this case. And I can assure you, based on the verdict that you all returned yesterday, that Sean Finnegan is never going to breathe free air again. Period. He's never going to get out of jail. We've talked about the sentencing options. We'll talk about them again that you'll have at your disposal today through this process. And we talked about them in jury selection. And of course, one of them is life imprisonment. The courts have told you before. I know we talked about that in jury selection, then we didn't talk about it in the guilt phase, and now we're talking about it again. But the minimum is 51 years. Okay? He's 56 years old. He's 57 next month. He's never getting out again. The other thing I want to say is that we accept.
I just started a poll on my in my chat on the defense rests. So if you're on alternate jurors channel, you can jump over and have a look at the poll in my chat and vote if you would like. And whilst you're there, you are more than welcome to like and subscribe, and then you can jump back. That'd be awesome. Awesome, wicked. Cheers.
Your verdict. I'd be lying if I said that we didn't disagree with some things, but that's just me doing my job for my clients. But you all have worked.
Yeah, that's a hard one, Jody.
That's a hard case.
I don't know what went on back
No,
then.
but like, do I agree
say
with the death
that
penalty or not? It's not something I've really considered because, like, here in Australia, it's not an option.
decisions and hard work
Though I've
involved,
obviously
whatever it is.
commented at times that person should be, have the DP.
There's just some people that fundamentally don't believe in it at all, which
Yeah,
is
exactly right.
absolutely fine. Yeah, yep.
And it's nothing I've ever really thought about because it's never been something we experience here in Australia.
Hence the poll.
Mm.
Get the old grey matter. Get the old grey matter working, eh? Even if
So
it
I'm
is
not allowed to opt out and say undecided.
You can put whatever you like, Tom. Whatever you like.
We accept the verdict that you all have rendered.
I'm going to have to go to the
Now, this
little
is the sentencing phase.
content creators room, though, in a minute.
Trial.
I'm gonna cross the legs. Yeah.
But
It's a controversial
normally,
topic.
The judge sets a sentence in the case, but this is
Yeah, Carmen, exactly,
So I want to give you some general principles, if you will, to maybe guide you.
He
through
sounds
this
very
process.
quiet.
Protect society. We talked about that.
Boosted
already.
a bit more.
I'm not can beat it to death.
I'm not a particularly religious person, Carmen. Like, I think last time I went to church, they tried to drown me. So, you know, except when I got married, obviously.
To serve justice and to follow the law. Now, where does the law come from in this case?
I can't seem to boost him any
We all
higher.
know laws are passed by our General Assembly, the legislative branch, our state government.
Just bump him up a
And
tad.
our
'Cause he's...
elected officials have decided that in this very unique circumstance, in a criminal case like this, that you, the jury, should have 3 options. We talked about those.
I thought it'd be cheaper just to give him the jab.
Parole or sentence of death.
Yeah, that
3
surprises
options.
me.
I'm here to tell
AJ?
you that the law is satisfied
Wow.
with a life sentence. The law is satisfied with a life sentence. In fact, a life sentence in this case follows the law, it promotes public safety, and it provides punishment to Sean Finnegan. He's never going to get out of jail again.
Oh, fair enough.
The sentence of whether to impose death is a choice among alternatives. But I want to remind you that it's not some foregone conclusion. The state a moment ago got up.
So, Carmen, what are the, like, there'd have to be
grounds for appeal?
No, like the grounds to actually request the death penalty to be imposed. Do you know what the standard they have to meet to be able to ask for that in the first place, or
well, guiltier than guilty?
Yeah.
They have to be really, really guilty.
As I didn't watch any of the pre-trial stuff or anything with this, and I haven't had a lot to do with death penalty cases, so yeah, that just popped into my little noggin. I haven't got ADHD.
And talked about putting things on a scale, weighing things.
And I swear he's got Parkinson's.
Yes, you are supposed to weigh things. But
he's got a little beady rat's eyes and nose.
Mechanical process.
Okay.
This is not some metaphorical scale where we get out.
Thank you.
6 chips on one side and 4 on the other, and presto changeo.
AJ might even be able to
done.
answer that one, perhaps.
That is not what this is about. And I know you all have been here a long time. I know you've been away from your families, friends, and your life, your job, all those things.
Yes, this jury was actually sequestered for this trial, so they have not been allowed to leave or go home, and all the deliberations. They've been put up in hotels and stuff when they're not either in court or in deliberations.
But I cannot impress upon you the importance of not falling into some mechanical view in this process.
Okay, if you're on a jury, would you prefer to be locked up in a hotel, or would you prefer to be able to go home each night?
Depends how long the trial was going to be, I suppose. Wouldn't particularly worry me either way, but yeah, if it was going to be like to take care of my trial, yeah, no, I'd rather go home. But a week away in a hotel, expenses paid.
Well,
could sound appealing at times.
I was just about to say the pool.
I was
going to say spa and sauna.
Climate, location. Yeah. Mitigating factors.
I can't remember how many
Exactly.
Throughout this process over the past couple of months, but there's been a lot. But
yes,
you remember back to
and it depends on what level of star the hotel criteria is too. Like if it's a bleeding dog kennel, no thanks.
And you took an oath that you could.
Yeah, it's got to be at least 4.
All 3 options, not just whether you can meaningfully consider a sentence of death, but that you could meaningfully consider all 3 options, and each of you said you could. And each of you are here for a reason. This is not random happenstance. We went through a very lengthy process to select, both from the state and from us, to select you all to serve on this jury. And you're here for a reason, is my point. The law does not recognize automatic death penalty. That's not what this process is about. So I just want to remind you, law is satisfied with a sentence of life. Next, I want to recognize the loss that Ms. Paxton's family has suffered. The state brought up an opening, and I think it is a good reminder that a great deal of this trial was focused on the power dynamics between Rebecca Dishman and Sean Finnegan.
Correct.
But I'm here to say
He is,
that
and
it's a
the
tragedy what
witness,
happened to her.
Rebecca,
It's
is
awful.
25.
We're not here to blame her for anything that she did or didn't do.
32-year age
None
gap.
of this is her fault. And so I just want to make that clear. Her family through this process, everybody's been very respectful.
In headlights, yes, correct.
Respect as well.
He's also a deer.
But my job,
Mhm.
hopefully, is to humanize my client. And I know that seems difficult based on some of the evidence that everybody's reviewed in this case, the lifestyle, the behavior. But I'm here to hopefully emphasize some positive qualities that he possesses. There will be some negative things as well. Our proof
This
will
is
consist-
the point that the defense is trying to make about issuing the DPs, that, you know, if you issue him life, that's a minimum of, I think they said 51 years, and he's 57. So he's never going to see light of day again, and he will be there until he,
Death do us part. Yeah.
correct. So what's the difference with imposing this as well? That's their argument, basically.
This of Jennifer Miller from Pine House again. I wanted her to come back and just talk briefly
So
about
that's
his job duties while he worked there.
So that's bad pause, Jody. Move
Because
that
Sean
up
has
there.
worked for, he's 56. He's worked for 40 years of his life.
These are Jennifer Paxton's family. That's her aunt, her grandmother, and cousin, I think. She testifies, and there's a couple of others as well.
Now, as they say with most crimes, sorry, you just paused. The one that you get caught for obviously isn't the first one you did. If it is, you're pretty unlucky. You know what I mean? So do you think he's probably done this before?
I don't
Just
know.
another point, yeah.
Don't know. Maybe not to the extent, but perhaps at least thought about it.
Yeah.
Fantasized about it. Who knows? You don't get to that point overnight all of a sudden.
No, that's right.
Talk a little bit about some of his work responsibilities and what he did there. But the bulk of our proof, our evidence, is going to be in the form of testimony from a family member of his, Miss Roxanne Mundy, who is, there were 6 children in Finnegan, that generation of children, Sean's brothers and sisters. So he's one of 6. Many of them have passed away. But Miss Mundy is his oldest brother's ex-wife. Sean was raised in Deerfield Beach, Florida, outside, just north of Fort Lauderdale, on the Atlantic side, in between.
All right, I'm just going to go to the loo.
Okay.
That's where he's from. He moved around some early as a kid, but that's where they settled. And so Roxanne is going to be able to give us not only her knowledge of the family dynamic of the Finnegan family, which is pretty dark, but she also has eyewitness. She lived in the house for about a year when she was pregnant with her first child. So she's going to give you some insights into what things were like there in the Finnegan home. But if I could sum it up, I would say that Sean Finnegan's formative years, his childhood, adolescence, teenage years, there was a lot of damage. There was injury, there was abuse, and none of which he had any control over. And we're offering this not as an excuse. Okay? I want to make that clear as well. I'm not saying that he's justified in doing what he did in this case, or that somehow it's excusable. I think that's an easy cliche, and I think it's kind of cheap. And so I just want to reinforce that we are here simply to explain who he is, because it's important. If you are going to vote whether to sentence someone to death, I think it's important to know a little bit about who they are. I think you want to know something about him, because he sat over here quietly this whole time. He didn't testify in the guilt or innocence phase, which is his right, and there are reasons for that.
Why would he testify?
Hearing or not, but regardless, I think it's important that we present some information on who he is. And it's also important to show and perhaps differentiate between what many of your all's childhoods were like. We didn't get into that granular level of detail in your jury questionnaires, so I don't know what everyone's walk in life has been, but I think that most of us were raised in a home with love and protection and dignity and guidance and respect. And he didn't really have that in the Finnegan house. So I think we all can agree that children start out basically the same. Through fate, other decisions and actions that are out of our control, our lives can end up remarkably different.
But there's a lot of people are abused and damaged and don't go around murdering people.
And the trauma that he suffered, I think it's important to show that he didn't have any help. He didn't have anybody there for him to support him. His mother, Frances, with 6 kids, and the behavior of his dad, John Sr., Big John. I think poor Frances was just trying to make it day by day. And I think Sean and some of his other brothers slipped through the cracks. And I try to think of it psychologically or even emotionally. And I've got a toddler at home. We put up baby toys a couple months ago, and one of those hammer sets where you push down and one pops up on the other side of the board. And I think that's a good analogy for the psychology or the emotion of what dealing with trauma is like. That I think Sean, things happened to him, which we're going to talk about. It's not pleasant, but I think that he buried it deep down and tried to lock it away. And it came back out in other ways, and not healthy ways, with violence and risky behavior and toxic relationships and poor decision-making and substance use. So I think that's important to remember. As the state mentioned, yes, there are going to be the legal principles of this process are presentation of aggravating circumstances and presentation of mitigating circumstances. And so our mitigation is going to be basically a variety of instances from his childhood, the things that he experienced, what his family unit was like, sort of the foundation of his life, and why perhaps he may have, why we're all sitting here talking to each other. Maybe some explanation for that. But ultimately, I want you to remember that aggravating circumstances are a reason to impose death. Mitigation is a reason to vote for life. And at the end of this small trial, I'll get back up and I'll be advocating for a sentence of life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. State ready calls first witness.
Your Honor, victim impact statements being read at this time. And
Okay.
if the court wants to address those in a particular order. Or
Let's see. The first one I've got is
should have 4 total.
Beverly Jeffers. Ms. Jeffers, could you step up here, please, ma'am? Would you have a seat up here at the witness stand for me, please?
Yes, know where you're coming from, Gabby.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. There's your victim impact statement.
Thank you.
If you'll read that to the jury, please.
I'm sorry. Your Honor, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of our family. Our lives have forever been changed. It is always hurtful to lose someone you love, but it's a different kind of hurt and pain to lose someone you love the way our family lost Jennifer. We didn't just lose Jennifer, she was taken from us. When Jennifer went missing, we looked all over town for her. Gail, Mill, and David and Brittany looked on the south side of Knoxville. The rest of us looked on the north side. We looked for her not just for a day or two. We looked for her for months, day after day. Her grandmother called Mom.
It's better my eyeballs aren't floating.
Day to ask us if I had seen Jennifer. It was so hard on us. We knew Jennifer wouldn't go for days and not contact Mill or one of us. Then on August the 6th, 2020, Patty, Jennifer's mother, received a call no mother should ever have to get.
Hello.
They found Jennifer. Patty was so devastated. When she called me, I couldn't understand what she was saying. Then when I finally did understand, I, like the rest of our family, went into complete shock. The most awful thing that could happen to a person and their family did happen. Jennifer was murdered. Jennifer, who was a mother, a daughter, a granddaughter, a sister, a niece, and a cousin. Her mother, Patty, didn't make it through the loss and devastation. She died with a broken heart before Patty passed away. She asked myself and the other ladies here with me today to promise her we would be here every day in court for her and Jennifer to show Jennifer was loved, is loved, and forever will be loved and missed. Thank you.
Oh, you want some? Oh, okay.
The next
The
I
treats
have.
are empty. Come on. Come on.
No, not the
Got any
treats.
questions?
Yes.
Questions for the fence?
I wondered why she
Thank
was
you.
nagging me.
Then next I have,
The treat bowl's
is
empty.
it Brittany?
Come here,
Payne?
princess. There you go. Yeah. Oh, nom nom.
Nom, nom,
Is it-
nom.
And I think Miss
Can
Payne
you
is
see
going to read
that?
hers, but
No.
she's also going to read her grandmother's. Is that correct?
There you go.
Your grandmother's name is
There you go.
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Eat up.
So raise your right hand, please, ma'am. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. And then obviously
Has this volume gone down, or is it me?
No, I can hear the sun.
Brittany Payne, BRITTANY PAYNE.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead.
Jennifer,
Is this yours or your grandmother's?
mine.
Okay.
Jennifer was my first cousin, but we grew up as sisters. I love Jennifer with all my heart, and losing her has really hurt me. I can't think straight. I have
No problem.
nightmares. I can't sleep right. And this past week, I can't even eat right. I can't even listen to songs without thinking of her. It hurts me to know that I'll never see her again. I'll never hear her voice again or see her smile. Or
I've got
hear
a
her
helicopter
laugh.
coming back over here
It
again in a
absolutely
sec.
kills me.
I'll turn
that I'll never
sound
get
off.
to tell her goodbye. Knowing I'll never get those phone calls or messages ever again destroyed my heart. My whole world changed, turned upside down. I'll never look at this world the same again.
Thank you. And I think this is your grandmother, correct?
Correct.
I think she's here today.
She is.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Jennifer was my granddaughter. I loved her dearly. Losing her destroyed my heart. She was my everything. When Jennifer went missing, we searched everywhere for her. Not for days or weeks. We searched for 8 months. When Jennifer was found, sadly, it wasn't the news we were hoping for. When I learned of Jennifer's death, a part of me died as well. I struggle every day. The anger, the hurt, the despair is indescribable. The nightmares that I still live with to this day will not go away in this life. The only thing that helps me get by from day to day is knowing I'll be with her again one day in heaven.
Apparently, no. It's only just. It's limited to purple. AJ, that's all.
Any questions from the defense?
Limited to purple.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And
Step down.
I just thought I'd
Then
share
next I have- is it
Princess.
Michelle? Michelle, I think you're the first cousin. All right, okay, step on up here, please, ma'am.
Uh-huh. Oh, you got camera shy, have you? Mm-hmm. Spoiled cats.
And
I had to turn the heater on in the room for them,
Okay.
so they didn't get
Raise
cold.
your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth,
Whilst
and
I was
nothing but the
away.
truth, so help you God. Thank you for having a seat, please. If you'll tell me your first name and last name and spell them both.
Michelle McMahon, MICHELLE, MCMAHAN.
Thank you so much. Now you can read your statement.
I'm Michelle, a first cousin to Jennifer's mother, Patricia. First, I'd like to tell you about Jennifer. She was kind and loving, and she cared about other people, even strangers. She grew up with a tough life, as many of us did. The difference between her and us is that she never seemed to make peace and get past the hardships of her childhood and upbringing. She never knew her natural father, and partially, I think that gave her a distorted view of what a typical family unit should be. I believe this led to her making a series of poor decisions in her own life, including the men she chose to try to build a family with. She longed to have a typical, normal American family, but she trusted too easily and too much. Jennifer's mother tried the best she knew how in raising Jennifer, but in her own words, she made a ton of mistakes, especially with Jennifer. Patty was desperate for Jennifer not to make the same mistakes that she did herself, like becoming a mother at just 15 years old. Because of this, she was way too hard on Jennifer, not allowing her to have normal friends. She wasn't allowed to play in the neighborhood like her brothers or hang out with others after school unless it was with family. This is why Jennifer so lovingly clung to her grandmother. She felt loved with her She was allowed to be more of a child, the normal life when she was with her. So naturally, Jennifer had more of a mother-daughter relationship with her than she did her own mom. Jennifer was also the middle child and the only girl to her mother, Patricia. When Jennifer went missing, it didn't go unnoticed by our family. Even though she had become part of the homeless community, many of us searched for her for months as we looked at every person we passed as we went about our daily lives, hoping to spot her somewhere, as we always had in the past. Patty, like many other parents of addicts, was terrified of getting that call or knock on her door to tell her that Jennifer had overdosed and was gone. I spent much of the time after Jennifer went missing with her mother until her passing only 16 months later. She suffered finding out about Jennifer's demise after 9 months of searching. She blamed herself. She stated and questioned regularly how if she had been a better mom, or if she had tried one more time to help her, if she could have prevented what happened to Jennifer. She thought Jennifer fell victim because maybe she didn't feel loved enough, or because she had been so hard on her in her life. Patty died in the hospital, still crying and suffering over what happened. Patty had battled health issues for many years, but after losing a second child, she had just given up. She was tired of the regret, tired of the nightmares and the day thoughts, tired of suffering and missing her daughter, Jennifer. Our family would just like to say that Jennifer was not a prostitute in the terms that one may think. She was a desperate, young, addicted woman who was offered drugs and a place to live in exchange for sex.
Please. Any questions from the state? Any questions from the defense? Thank you, ma'am. You step down. Freestanding form, we're free to go. Ma'am, clerk will mark that as sentencing ID number 1. And it's just for ID. It's not made an exhibit. Let me get together, please.
So if 100 degrees is 39 degrees Celsius.
40%.
That's
0.4.
Yeah, so that's 0.49. Yeah, 36.
And any additional proof by the state?
Okay.
Thank you. And for the defense, who'll be your first witness?
Please, we call Jennifer Miller.
So we need to get Miss Miller.
She's outside the hallway, Judge. Okay.
Is Jennifer Miller?
Thank you, Deputy. I'll get it for me.
Co-counsel.
Okay.
I can't remember, to be honest. Sorry, I was typing something else. Is this still the prosecution? Yes, it is. I have to be someone related to Jennifer Paxton.
Yes, sir.
Because the only witness the defense calls is Roxanne.
We'll take about a 5-minute break. Let's go step down and go to the restroom. Now, 2 officers, y'all need to go. Okay, so y'all stay with me. Okay.
It's a bit tricky.
Oh, she's got it in her. She pretends she doesn't, but yeah, it's there. All right. So they come back after a break. Oh, okay. This is I know who she is now, who you just asked. She was Sean Finnegan's manager at the where he worked as a cook, and basically she just said he was a good employee. He turned
Really
up on
nice
time,
guy, yeah.
very rarely late, very rarely, didn't turn up, and yeah, he did his job. Okay, so this lady though was very interesting to listen to. There we go. Now this is, as I said, so Sean is the second eldest of 6 children. So his older brother, I think it's John, is who this lady met and eventually married and lived with the family whilst she fell pregnant. And Sean was only, I think, 13 or 14 at the time.
All right.
That's where she comes in. Kinky AJ. Come on, play. Oh, it was playing. He just wasn't moving. Blink. L. Oh.
Ma'am, if you'll step. Good morning. If you'll raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Have a seat, please. If you'll tell me both your first name, you have a seat.
Nearly finished all of those strawberries. Got 2 left.
If you'll speak up in the microphone, they'll have
2 punnets.
Oops. All right, first name and last name.
My bad.
My name is Roxanne Mundy, ROXANNEMUNDY.
Thank you. Questions?
Ms. Mundy, welcome. Where do you live currently? You don't have to give your street address, but generally, where do you live?
In Indiana.
Okay. And how old are you, ma'am?
Oh, she your neighbour.
61.
Your neighbour there, AJ.
Who do you live with?
My husband.
Okay. Do you have children?
We do.
Okay. How many biological children do you have?
2.
Okay. And are there stepchildren as well?
Yes.
How many stepchildren?
We have 4 other daughters. 4.
Okay. Do you work outside the home?
I'm sure they have Wi-Fi.
Historically, did you work in a particular field?
Yes, always.
Wireless rechargeables now, don't they?
Construction.
I know it's been a long time.
Finnegan? You recognize him sitting over
Uh-huh.
here?
Yes.
When's the last time you saw him?
Well, it's been probably about a little over 3 decades. Personal.
Okay. At some point in your life, did you meet his older brother,
Yes.
John Finnegan Jr.?
Yes.
Describe how that occurred, please.
We were dating. We met each other. And then we were married.
Okay. Where did you all meet? Where were you living?
We met in a restaurant. We lived in separate places. While
My
we were
brother lived
dating.
in Indiana for about a
And
year
then
coming.
Later passed out. Then we moved in together when we were engaged.
What state were you living in?
Florida,
Okay. Which part of Florida?
Fort Lauderdale.
Okay. Is that where you were raised?
Yes, that's where I was raised.
That's where you grew up?
Yes.
How old were you when you first met John Finnegan Jr.?
Early 20s, 21ish, 22.
Okay. And when you first met him, were you dating immediately, or was it just an acquaintance?
Well, we of course talked and spoke on the phone.
That's to you, T.
It was St. Charles, Indiana.
St. Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say?
Yep.
I think AJ's in Bloomington, is it? Or Bloomingfield or Blooming?
I have no idea where it was. I know he bitched about the snow.
Blooming heck. Blooming something.
Technology we do now. So it would be a phone call or something like that. And then a lunch or a dinner.
You're so polite,
walk
Carmen.
on the beach kind of thing. And then as we get to know each other, we did that often until we really knew each other.
You were dating?
Yes.
When you were first dating John Jr., did you meet any of the other family members at that point? Did he introduce you to them?
He was working
not
for an
right away.
Italian company and had to go and fire a lot of people, so he wasn't well liked.
Probably about 6 months or so that he introduced me to the family.
Okay. And describe for the jury your first impressions of the Finnegan family.
Well, the father was quite fearful.
Gabby.
I did have very uneasy feelings. The children seemed to be even afraid of their father, like very meek, quiet. The mother,
I'm pretty sure it was St. Charles.
kind and soft-spoken.
Hang on, I'll look it
but
up.
also had the same appearance of perhaps fear of the husband. It seemed like he controlled what people did or said within the home, and if they were allowed to, like, really, say anything, or maybe if they got out of line, because he was very aggressive.
When you first met John Finnegan Jr., was there what was that interaction like? Excuse me, when you first met John Sr., Big John, what was that interaction like?
I was terrified of the man. He said horrific thing. Like your first greeting with him as a female, you know, he was not kind.
Inappropriate?
Inappropriate, very inappropriate.
Okay. So that was, what about Mr. Sean Finnegan? Do you have any, like when you first started dating his older brother, did you have any initial interactions with him or takeaways or memories?
Just that he might have been a little afraid and a little shy to come out and really be out there, as you know, most families. I took it as just a new meeting, you know, with the children, and children can be giddy because his other little brother and sister were also in the home, and they were your typical kids, but still, like what I would say, like, as if you were to stifle a child and not allow them to interact with guests, perhaps, you know, go to your room, don't come out, you know, kind of thing from his father.
Well, let's try to.
I think I'm a state over. I think it was St. Charles, Illinois.
You were early 20s. You first started dating John Finnegan Jr. How old would he have been at that time, the oldest brother?
Well, if I was 22, yeah, he was 24.
Okay. And the next youngest brother below him is who?
Would have been Edward.
Okay. He went by Eddie.
Eddie.
Okay. How old was Eddie at that time? Approximately, if you know.
He would have been.
So at the moment, we are at the poll. Do you think the defendant deserves the DP? 75% people say yes. Nobody says no. 25% undecided, and 0% I don't believe in the DP. So we'll update you with that a bit later on.
And 20, well, I think he was just a year under John.
Okay. And then after Eddie, who was next?
And then Jimmy. Or no, I'm sorry, Sean.
Okay. How old was Sean at that time?
In his early to mid-teens.
Okay. And then next was Jimmy?
Yes.
And how old was Jimmy?
Young teens, mid-teens.
Okay. And then after Jimmy, who was next?
Colleen.
Okay. How old was Colleen?
Maybe 10-ish, 11 maybe.
Okay. And then the youngest was who?
Danny.
Danny. And how old was Danny?
7 or 8.
Okay. All right. So at some point, did your relationship develop with John Finnegan Jr.?
Yes.
Did it progress, I guess is a better
It did.
Okay. And without going through the entire relationship history between you two, but can you just
We
describe
don't have
to the jury,
bears.
how that progressed and that led you to end up moving in with the Finnegan family? Describe that for me, please.
Okay. John and I, you know, dated until the time we thought that we would really like to spend our lives together and be engaged and get married and create our own future. He was very much different than the rest of the family because he pretty much had moved out earlier. So he didn't have what was going on in the home in his life. And he really didn't want to go there much. And then we decided to move in together. I lived in a townhome. He lived with a friend. And then we decided we were going to start looking for an apartment. We did that. We moved in together. We had a roommate. And then I found out I was pregnant. His mom had come over. We were trying to have
Not
his mom
soccer.
with us as much as possible. And so one day I was not feeling well, you know, and kind of progressed a little bit for a little time where I thought maybe I better see my doctor and have a test, and found out I was pregnant. So then we had to, you know, make a bigger decision, being engaged and then getting married and all that. So we did. Through my 4th month sonogram, there were a little complications with the pregnancy. So the doctor said that somebody would have to be with me all the time and be slower or bed rest. I was always a very active person. Bed rest wasn't going to work for me. So we decided to speak to Sean's parents. And because of the house being so large and everything, there was a nice big back bedroom. that we were going to move me into. So here we had to go again, get folks, and we moved in with his parents and the kids until after my pregnancy. And then after we had baby, maybe 2 or 3 months later, we were able to actually go back and get into our own place again.
Before we launch into the family in the home, as you became integrated in their family, did you learn about how the Finnegans had come to live in Florida?
Yes. Later, some things are hard to talk about for others, but later on and after comfortable conversations, were easy to.
I'm laughing because my cat jumped up off the bed last night and did the same thing as it sprung up. It's just gone. Ow, it was putrid, absolutely putrid.
Our cat Loki does the same.
Crop dust, yes. I love it when pets fart.
To come by. John had let me know that when they moved here, they had to move in a hurry.
And then they surprised, like, where'd that come from?
Had to leave everything behind. They ended up in a car in a rest area, and that was in Florida, in Pompano or Deerfield, and they're very close together. So
yes, well, you have Great Danes, darling, and they do bigger poops than you do. So I'm checking their farts are pretty nasty. Yeah. I actually have an air freshener hanging in my car that says, my farts have been known to hospitalize small children.
it's one big
yes,
city.
And that's why you will get pink eye.
In a car. Their father went to work. My husband went to work with him, and the other children, the boys, to family uncles, and I don't know that they were really biological family uncles because I never met that side of the family. That's what I was told. So, and then Colleen and Danny stayed in the car with Frances, their mother, in the rest area. And that's pretty much the basis of how they started out.
You know how long they lived that way?
I understand it to be quite some time. It could have been anywhere from 6 to 9 months.
And that was while they were trying to get money together to get a state.
Right, to save money to get into
Oh, dear.
Right, so when John Jr. went
Do you
to
not
work
know
with his
the
dad,
answer
was
to
he
that?
still a school age? Was he still a juvenile?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where have
I
you
think
been?
he was 16 when it happened.
And so did he go back to school at that point?
No.
So he dropped out?
Yes.
And what kind of work did the father do, Big John?
He was a butcher.
So what kind of work was John Jr. doing with his dad?
It was a supermarket that they worked in. So he did like shelf work, stocking, sometimes wrapping meat. But basically, the groceries, just putting everything out.
Okay. All right. The family eventually found a stable residence in Deerfield. Is that right?
They did.
Okay. Describe what the house looked like, or what kind of place was it?
House was beautiful, large, very open. I mean, just
It's interesting how they come. So she's basically just explained they lived in a car in a rest area, like a rest stop, truck stop, for up to 9 months with the 6 children.
How would you
Then they go to this extraordinarily large house in Florida. Have a listen how they get there.
Florida, but the homes are built very large, very tall ceilings, very strong, beautiful architecture, and the rooms, of course, like when you walked into their home, it was a living room, kitchen, dining room, kind of huge open area.
So who actually bought that house?
Eddie did. Their son, Eddie, the second to John's under John.
Do you hear that?
So how old was Eddie?
He was in his teens.
So the teenage son bought the house.
And how do you think he came into the money to be able to do that?
That's a good question.
You listen.
He was working for some Italian people that probably weren't the nicest type of Italian people.
So you moved
What did
is that right?
Tony
That's the
Soprano
best.
say?
That is the best explanation that I've heard. How could he afford that as a teenager? He was working with Italian people that perhaps weren't the nicest of Italian people.
It's like Tony Soprano used to say he was in waste elimination.
I know, Adair. It's one of those things, isn't it? Just like it's something that I cannot ignore, and every time I hear a fart, I have to giggle. I cannot help myself, whether it's me, an animal, a stranger.
You are
name
just a child.
I am.
You're just a child.
I cannot help myself. I have to laugh. Yeah, so I'm tipping that might be where she was going with that. Just quietly.
Moved in. Who all was living there?
Oh, Sean, Danny, Colleen, Francis, their grandfather, their father's father, who was a war veteran.
They're just like
John
these gangsters.
Senior, the father, myself, and my husband.
Okay, and so Eddie and Jimmy were already out of the house?
Yes, Jimmy was on his own at an early stage.
Eddie,
Eddie was on his own.
So Eddie bought this house for the family and had his own place as well.
So how old was Sean when you moved in to live with them?
I would
Yeah, I think my great grandfather was a prison outfit on a big boat.
What was his demeanor like?
I'm going to bump this up.
Giddy, funny, typical.
Tell me if it gets too fast.
But kind of stayed to himself in his room all the time. You know, that his room was, it was dark. It was, like headbanger music, heavy metal, if you will. Darker walls, just kind of to himself all the time.
Was he going to school at that time?
No.
Do you know why?
Well, he was supposed to. And there were times that him and his brother walked to school, but there was a truancy officer that came to the house one day and wanted to know why they weren't in school because they had missed so many days. And
so he was in finance then.
Because he was skipping school, he was going to uncle's home who was picking him up with his brother. And
well, okay. Before I get to that, let me just take this. Ms. Lundy, have I provided you some of, first of all, can you identify this packet of documents I'm handing to you?
Yeah, these are Sean's school records.
And have I provided that to you for you to look over?
Yes.
In preparation for your testimony?
It's a bakery.
I'm not asking you for from them, but based on your general knowledge of his lack of attendance at school, those documents appear to reveal that he stopped going to school about the 8th grade.
Yeah, my ex became a Hell's Angel and decided to work in collections.
Oh.
Okay, so Sean wasn't going to school when you moved in. Were any of the other children not going to school? Any other siblings?
As far as I know, Jimmy was not showing up.
Okay. Now, before we get to that, I just want to ask you about the general dynamic in this family unit when you moved in. Okay. And I want to go down the list. When you moved in, it sounds like you had your
Sounds like the perfect job to me.
Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I love cannolis.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, it was a large lanai, and we turned it into the room, the bedroom, and the baby's room.
What was John Finnegan Sr., Big John, describe his behavior, demeanor, affect, describe what he was like to be around to this jury?
Awful. Everybody in the house feared him. Didn't know what he was going to be like when he came home. He was a major alcoholic. And then later found out that he was also gambling. He was always very aggressive. If he walked in the door and Francis did not have his food prepared, when he wanted, like if he walked in the door, he wanted it on the table.
And if it wasn't on the table, what happened?
Yeah, if it wasn't on the table, and trust me, he pretty much always had a beer or something in his hand, he'd throw it.
At whom?
Her.
At Francis?
Yeah.
He
was, yeah, well, yes.
Not the poor horsey.
If they heard him, they would run to the room. They wouldn't come out. They would terrify them. And he was always really aggressive, throwing things around, breaking things, picking up dining room chairs and throwing it. Whoever was there, the children could be standing there, and he would just act like that. So it was terrifying, honestly.
Was he, as it relates to Frances Finnegan, you're saying he was verbally abusive to her?
He was always very degrading to her.
Was he physically abusive to her?
Yes. Very.
How so?
Well, the times that I could see is when he would throw things at her visibly. And then there were times he would drag her to the bedroom and you could just hear the beating and crying and the begging and pleading of please stop. You're hurting me, stop it. The kids are going to hear this. It was not an easy feat to listen to.
And as to his dynamic with his children that were in the home, at least, what was that like?
The same.
Abusive?
Very.
Verbally?
Both verbally and physically.
Okay. Did he spare Danny and Colleen, the youngest, or were they all subject to this?
Danny and Colleen kind of got they did hear all of the violence, and they did hear the vulgar remarks. And there were times that, a bottle or a dish or a glass vase or something would miss their head, and they go run to the room. But he never really snatched them up like he did the boys.
And I apologize, I forgot to ask you later, but we don't have to go through all of it. But had there already been an incident before you moved in with them where you heard about abuse between Big John and Frances? And Sean was in the home? That was before you moved in, though? You knew about it?
John and I, my husband, ex-husband, we were actually out at an outing by the airport where a lot of us girls and guys got together. A friend came to us and told us that we were needed at home because Frances had been beaten beyond recognition. And it was Sean that had asked somebody to get us to go help. And when we got there, Frances was behind the sofa. And we, I guess he couldn't get her to come out. And when we finally got her out from behind the furnishings, she was beat up so bad. And she didn't want to go to the hospital. She really never wanted to. I cleaned her up, she had a gash in her head that bled, and heads bleed a lot, but cleaned her up, tried to calm her down, and, invited her to our home for safety to keep him away from her. So.
Okay. Thank you. Now, as far as the children in the house at that time, what were their lifestyles like, their hobbies, their interests, peers?
There wasn't really anything. I mean, this is the kind of person you would think, like, for lack of better words, like keep your family as a prisoner, to keep them in the home, not allow them sports or normal everyday things that, children would be able to do. They weren't allowed things like that. No sports, no type of activities.
Did they have friends come over to play?
Never.
Did they go to friends' houses to play?
Never.
Did the family do family things like go to movies or go to the beach, things like that?
No. Their mom wasn't even allowed to wear shorts, even at home.
Did they go to church?
No.
Were they religious?
They prayed to God. They believed in God.
Okay. So did Sean have his own bedroom when you were living there?
He shared a room with Danny when I lived there.
Okay. And so Danny was younger. In your testimonies that Sean tended to stay in his room and crank up the heavy metal.
Yeah, he was always in a dark way.
Okay. So was he abusing drugs or alcohol?
Both.
Okay. What kind of drugs was he using?
I don't know. They were being administered to him by his uncles.
Okay. We'll get to that, but
I know that he smoked pot and he drank.
Okay. Did you all get along, you and Sean, when you were living there?
Yep. Okay. The kids were, good when the dad wasn't around.
Did he have any other hobbies or interests to your knowledge?
Just his music.
Music. Okay. Okay. We talked about Frances's life. Did she have any other life outside of the home? What about Big John's social life? What kind of lifestyle did he have?
He was gone all the time, always gambling, always drinking, going to the pizza parlor where Eddie worked.
Okay, so
Gabby, that links for
Eddie
you.
Finnegan own a pizza parlor, or did he manage one?
It was a partnership between him and the gentleman that helped him open it and get his start in life.
Okay. Did you have suspicions that was also maybe a little shady?
Yep, I believe so. I wouldn't be able to prove it, but by the amount of money it took to open it and to buy a home and have a mortgage at his age, yeah.
What kind of gambling was, if you know, what kind of gambling was Big John doing?
Anything that he could do, from numbers to the dog races were really big because they were all the time.
Okay.
And then when the horses came.
Okay. Did he ever get punished physically for his gambling debts?
Well, there was a time once that Eddie called and asked us if something, from the house, if any one of us had something done, but went to open the pizza parlor and found his father laying on the ground by the door, all beat up.
Okay. At some point, was there kind of a sequence of events that was the final straw of Big John living with the family?
Well, after the beatings and after, the police having to be called all the time because I had Francis get an EPO, protective order. I don't know if everybody knows the abbreviations. Every state's different, but so we had a protective order taken out on him so that he couldn't come near the home, so she could be back in her own home and the children to be safe and everything.
Did he follow that?
No.
You're welcome.
No, I was there one day.
Okay, tell the jury about what happened.
Yeah, okay. The way the house was, the driveway was very long. I went up, and the garage was not an enclosed garage. It was the type you could park the car up into. And there was a door. The first door was from the garage. You walked in, laundry room, and then the second door that you walked through was the door that went into the kitchen. So even though he had the protective order against him, he said, it's just a piece of paper. I don't care. He was screaming outside, throwing bricks at the window, banging on the door until he finally kicked the door in. He kicked the first door in, and then he kicked the second door in, and I own pit bulls, and I had Brandy, which was one of them at the time, by my side, because he just came in all drunk and screaming, had a beer bottle in his hand and threw it at Francis's head. And when he did that, I had my baby in my arms as well, and it missed my baby's head maybe by an inch or two, and my dog attacked him. My dog tore him up, and he had to go to the hospital. They quarantined my dog because, I guess that's what happens when a dog does bite somebody, regardless of whether they're protecting the home or not. And she ripped open his side and his hip and half his leg. So at the hospital, there was an officer there, but also at the home with us, there was an officer there communicating with each other. The officer in the hospital wanted, something from the home or whatever. And then he was like, the dog, we got to do something about the dog. The officer said he has the one that was with us said he has a protective order. The doors are kicked in. The windows have the big, marks from the bricks because it was a huge double plated glass window. And the dog, was fine because the officer wanted to see if she was aggressive and mean like that, other than protecting the family. And Brandy wasn't. She was, a little marshmallow, but she just, she never liked him really. But
Understood. As a result of those events, did the family minus the father, did they eventually move in with you and John Jr.?
Yeah, we couldn't let them stay there any longer. We had already moved out by that point, and I was visiting. So we had a landlord who had an apartment coming up available. The folks had moved out, but it still needed the painting and maintenance that they do in apartments.
Sure.
And he allowed Sean was at that point with his mother, Colleen and Danny. And so we spoke to the landlord about perhaps helping them with the money for deposits and to get in there. And because of the circumstances and because John and I had lived there so long and we're good friends and stuff with them, they let them move in the day the apartment was ready and then worked out a billing arrangement for them to have so that they could, of course, have a place of their own to live where he couldn't find them.
Was Sean working? He was a teenager.
He was working at Burger King.
Okay. Did Frances get a job there as well?
Yes, she did, through Sean.
And was that, I think you told me, was that Frances's first job?
Very first job. Never drove a day in her life. Very first job. She was as proud could be. I've never seen a woman so happy about going to work, and she walked every day. So yeah, it was something for her.
I know you mentioned earlier, and I cut you off, but we do have to talk about some other serious subject matter. And I didn't mean to cut you off then, but I just wanted it to make sense, at least in my mind. So at some point you were saying earlier that maybe while the family was living out of their car at this rest area and getting settled, okay, that Sean and his other brother were being watched by some distant relative of John Finnegan Sr.
If they were,
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you later speak with Frances about what was going on?
Yeah, that was
Okay. Can you speak up a little bit? Can you tell this jury what you and Frances discussed?
Well, Sean came home one day while he was supposed to be coming home from school. It wasn't school he was coming home from. And he was a hot mess. He just walked in his room, closed the door, like in desperate, like didn't want to cry, but just couldn't handle the pain any longer, and told his little brother that he was being abused by the uncles, sexually abused, and made to do things, against his will, what he didn't want to do. And I mean, it was just horrific for someone to take, a child, making them do things and laying them on their bellies and beating them and having sex with them, having other people have sex with them. Just and brutal, not, nothing like a fantasy. It was an awful experience for him.
Was he and his brother?
Yes.
Both of them?
And
How long did that go on?
I don't know how long it went on because I don't know how long they had to be there with the uncle first in the beginning, but it didn't go on long after the truancy officer came to the house.
Okay. And you also learned that later in time. Sean discussed that with you some, right?
Years later, when we were working together.
Okay, we'll come to that. Working together, but so the sex abuse went on for several months, and were they also being plied with drugs and alcohol?
Yes.
Okay. And eventually a truancy officer comes around, basically, hey, these boys are not going to school. And so now, is that when Francis became aware of what was happening?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened as a result of Francis and Big John finding out about this truancy officer?
Okay. Truancy officer comes to the house. He was not there at the moment, but Francis took the paperwork he gave her, told her that if the boys weren't going to start showing up at school like they were supposed to, they would be kicked out of school. They would not be able to go to that school anyway. And so she had the paperwork. Her husband, John, came home. She discussed it with him briefly, and he took the paper, and he beat Sean into oblivion. He could hardly walk. He went in his room. He couldn't even go to school for a week after that. He was so bruised and battered. And, in my opinion, like, in such fear of his father, because he's always like this. But this is horrific because now the school is involved. And I think, he might have been afraid that, they might find out what was going on because he wasn't in school. He was being abused somewhere else.
Okay. Okay. At some point later, Sean's a few years older. Did you two work together? Okay. Where did you work together?
We worked in a seafood steak restaurant, Sea Shanty.
Okay. And where was that restaurant located?
Fort Lauderdale, not far from our home.
Had Sean already been working there for a while?
Okay. A couple years before I went there.
Did he help you get that job? Okay. So when you started working together, what was his job title?
He was the master chef, the boss of the restaurant.
How old was he?
At that time, bear with me for a moment. Maybe very late 20s, early 30s.
Okay. So what was he responsible for? What did he have to do?
He ran the restaurant. He was the restaurant manager, but he was also the head chef. He's a great cook. And being the type of restaurant that it was, being very nice, and food critics coming in all the time and stuff. His boss, the owner of the restaurant, he was never with us, but Sean was the boss. So he would tell Sean, you have to make an appearance at least once in the evening, and he would have to put his white coat on and his chef's hat and go out and greet people, especially if we knew food critics were there. He would like to know anyway, just if there was something that maybe he didn't like or something, and we could make it different. But yeah, he always used to go out and greet all of the customers that he spoke to, and he loved it. He loved his job. I mean, this was a good part of his life, and being responsible and on his own, and that was like a big thing to him.
Eventually, did he go to work at another restaurant? Did that
years
sea
later
shanty fail or something?
Well, Sea Shanty actually tried to build other restaurants around, and I think Ohio might have been one of them, but Sean, they just crashed. They couldn't keep it going. So Minio's was a chicken place, and that was not far from Sea Shanty, same street, just farther down the road. He went to work there as their head chef.
Okay. And eventually, did he, as a result of his job with Minio's, did he move to Tennessee at some point?
Mm-hmm. They wanted him to go up there. They wanted to open a restaurant. I think it was Knoxville.
Okay.
And they wanted him to open the restaurant.
At some point, did you and Sean kind of lose touch or grow apart?
When he moved to Tennessee.
Okay. Was that also when you and John Jr. were divorced as well? Was that perhaps because of that? Okay.
Yes.
What about when Francis moved to Tennessee? Do you know anything about that?
I only know that John, my ex-husband, and his new wife said they had no space in their home to care for her. And Danny couldn't, Colleen could not. And John said, let Mom come live with me. I'll take care of her.
Okay. Did he come pick her up in Florida?
I think so. I think it was him.
Okay. So when you were around Sean more frequently, I mean, I know it's been 30 years.
34, actually.
Did he, how did he present himself? What was his?
Well, being out of danger and being on his own for years, I guess, helped him along. If you were to meet him and not know him, you would just think he was like any person, cordially mannered, kind to people, dressed well, nice vehicles, nice homes, beautiful wife. You know, you're all around American person. You would never think that he went through the things that he went through or anything like that.
Do you have pets?
Oh yes, he loves his animals, dogs.
Okay. Was he abusing substances still, drinking or smoking or using drugs?
He would drink at night and smoke pot after work, but you know, that was at his house.
Do you think he was drinking to excess? Did you get an issue with it?
At some point, yes, he started getting back into being drunk a lot.
All right. Well, we appreciate you being here, Roxanne, and you know some information about this case, why we're here today.
Yes.
Right. And you understand that we're in a sentencing hearing in this case. You understand the jury's already reached a verdict that he's guilty, that Sean is guilty of murder. You understand that?
Okay. Yes.
Do you have an opinion on what kind of penalty he should receive?
Well, I believe in God so much, and I believe that I have to live by God's law. And I would probably just ask that no matter what, you know, I don't believe in taking a life because it's not, you know, for me to do. So I'd ask to at least just spare his life. I mean, punishment for all according to their bad deeds certainly, you know, should be administered. But I mean, God, I can't. I just, you know, to spare his life is probably what I would ask.
That's what it's judge.
Questions?
No.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Sit down. Appreciate the program. Or leave, whichever you'd like to do. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, that concludes the victim impact statements, and pretty much he just gives the jury their instructions and off they go to deliberate, which they do so. That I think this was streamed on Tuesday, I think. And I think they deliberated for about a day and a half, perhaps, from memory. So let's stop sharing that. And we'll go to the verdict, shall we? Our poll, I've just ended it. It ended up being 80% yes. He deserves the death penalty, and 20% undecided, and 0% no, and 0%. What was the other one I said? I don't believe in the death penalty. Okay, let's full screen this, share it, present. Not sure which one I'm at. Yes, that's the one. Got 4 screens open. All good. Okay, so this is the verdict. All right, drum roll, please. Oh, I've got it muted.
I can have a seat. It's really important that I do this correctly. And when I say that, I know that for me to ask things of you is, I just need you to be patient with me. So on aggravated number 1, the way I read it, it is not complete. There's a portion of aggravated 1 that's left out. And if that was inadvertent, leaving that section out, then I need you to put that section in and initial it. But if it was inadvertent, if that was what you meant to do, then I need y'all to come back and tell me. Your 4-person can come back with you and say, we meant to leave that.
Now I've queued it up at the wrong place.
And
good job, Jody. Idiot. There we go. Start again and play.
Just a moment, I'm going to bring the jury in and announce the verdict. I know I've got family members and friends and folks here. There can not be an outburst on this. Hard enough. We've all worked very hard. The district attorney's office worked very hard. Counsel has worked very hard for Mr. Finnegan. I cannot mess this up at this time by any outburst. If that's a point with you, you need to leave, please. All right? Okay. Thank you. Let's see if they open the door.
Now he really does look like a deer in headlights.
Thank you. Have a seat, please.
You imagine what's going through his head at the moment?
As I said, the jury has reached a verdict in this case. We, the jury, unanimously find the following listed statutory aggravating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. And they listed them specifically. 1, the murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, and they involved torture or serious physical abuse beyond that necessary to produce death. Number 3, the murder was knowingly committed, solicited, directed, or aided by the defendant, while the defendant had a substantial role in committing any rape and or kidnapping. And 4, the defendant knowingly mutilated the body of the victim after death. We, the jury, unanimously find the state's proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the statutory aggravated circumstances or circumstances so listed above outweigh any mitigating circumstances. Therefore, we, the jury, unanimously find the punishment for the defendant, Sean Finnegan, shall be death. So, ladies and gentlemen, I need to make sure every one of my jurors.
There you go. There you have it.
So I'll do like I did last time. Juror number 1, is that your verdict, sir? Yes. Juror number 2. Juror number 3. Juror number 4. Yes. Juror number 5. Yes. Juror number 6. Yes. Juror number 7. Yes. Juror number 8. Juror number 9. Yes. Juror number 10. Yes. Juror number 11. Yes. And juror number 12. Yes. In just a moment, I'm going to excuse y'all. If y'all can hang around a few moments, I'd like to come talk to you. We won't talk anything specific about the case, but I would like to share with you for just a moment. If you'd be more comfortable in the other big room, that'd be great. Whatever, y'all get to decide wherever you'd like to go. But if you can hang on for just a few minutes, I've got some additional work I need to do, and then we'll go from there. Okay? All right, everybody rise, please. Thank you. Y'all excused. Take a seat.
Death penalty.
Mr. Finnegan, you can stand up, please, sir, with your attorneys. Upon the verdict of the jury, find you, Sean Finnegan, to be guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment. Upon further verdict of fixing the punishment of death, it is therefore ordered that you shall be put to death by lethal injection in the mode prescribed by Tennessee law pursuant to the provision.
Just sounds so horrible, doesn't it? You should be put to death by lethal injection. Even just saying the words gives me goosebumps.
I believe there was one that actually went wrong not long back, about a month ago.
Provisions of Tennessee Code annotated 40-23-114. You'll be transferred to the custody of the warden at the state penitentiary at Nashville, Tennessee, pending appellate review. Thank you. Have a seat, sir. And then also I'm going to sign the order that as the 13th juror, I accept and approve the sentencing and the verdict rendered by the jury. Anything else from the state that I need to take care of? No, Your Honor. Anything else from the defense? Yes. All right. We'll stand recess.
That's correct, AJ. Absolutely.
100%.
Yep. And no, not Dolly Parton. Carmen. So there we have it, folks. Wrapped up in a nutshell. Just like that. So he's got a little bit to think about, doesn't he?
He showed no emotion.
No, he hasn't shown any emotion throughout the entire process, pretty much, which I suppose is neither here nor there for him. But yeah, and watch it with Shy, because the level of deviance and SA could. No, I not mean to say that right up her alley, but given what she's studying, could be a topic of interest, basically. Yeah. Yeah. It's still not a nice process, is it? Either way. So yucky.
Yes, well, the last hanging in Australia was via Yeah, you know what I mean. DP.
Yeah.
It was by hanging in Australia at Pentridge.
Was that not at Old Melbourne Jail?
No, Pentridge.
No, there you go. Twinsies, AJ. Don't think I'm allowed to say that, even jokingly. What did you say? What did you say? You didn't say anything wrong, doll. Nothing at all. All right. Well, that brings us to the using right up someone's alley in this case. Yeah. No. Sorry. Yes. Yes. Okay. I'll give you that one. that one slipped through the cracks. Okay. You'll have to forgive me. It's 1:47 a.m. You know. Thanks, Gabby, Supermod. Excellent job. Thank you very, very much. Again, thank you everyone for your support.
Thanks for letting me tag along.
You're welcome. Thanks for watching me eat 2 punnets of strawberries during a death penalty trial.
I ate half the punnet and some chocolate.
Seriously wrong. And we're watching this heinous trial, and we're talking about farting and dogs and pets. So yes, that's always classy, always fun. Love it here. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It's totally free, and it just tells us that you love us, and it tells YouTube that you love us, and then they send our videos out to lots of other people, and then they can love us too. Thank you, Carmen. It's a pleasure having you here, as always.
Nice chatting again, Carmen. Thanks, AJ.
Yay! That's why chat does rock. It does. And Gabby rocked my socks. We're just missing Flash Fan and Bri. You know? Can I say? What can I say? And Udahef disappeared somewhere too.
Girls' night tonight.
Carmen, if you think tonight was a pleasure and fun, tune in Saturday night, 10 p.m. your time, my channel. We've got Grandma coming on, doing an exclusive Heather interview. Okay. Oh, you'll have to watch it on the replay then. I'm sure it's going to be a cahoot. Ah, dear. Oh, it's coming on different time. So it's 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's when we're starting, and I think it'll go for probably a good couple of hours, no doubt. Yeah, bring your questions. Because she's okay, cool. Happy to answer all the questions in chat. Appropriate ones, obviously. Well, you know.
No, this one's for inappropriate as well, I believe.
You bring the bad ones. I'm sure that topic will probably be on the agenda. Just putting that out there. Not in there, out there. Okay? Anyway, it will be funny and it'll be hilarious. All right. You'll be... Yeah. All right. Yeah, she'll be sitting like lopsided as well, no doubt. All right. Well, thanks again for everyone for being here. I think I might. I haven't spoken to you, AJ, about tomorrow. I'll be in touch with you if you'd like to do something tomorrow evening. That's totally up to you, but we can work that out. Otherwise, we can have a night off. Totally, but I will be in touch. So until then,
okay.
And smash that like and subscribe. All right. Thanks, Tan.
See ya.
Make good choices. Drugs are bad. Okay. Bye, y'all.
Debbie here. Fill your screen with cheer. Hit like and tap subscribe. subscribe. Join our happy tribe.